Hello, cadets, and welcome to Out of This World. And we are about to blast off again with Woke Disney World. And tonight I'm joined by Paul Hall again, and we are going to be talking about all things Disney. I think we went for 3 hours last time.
Yeah, well, last time I confess I was just so excited coming on. I think we went backpacking and I brought the whole RV and the kitchen sink, quote unquote. So plenty of raw material to work with. So tonight, just take us where we're gonna go and probably redress some of that again, probably go into some new territory. And I'm sure there's so much that was just touched upon last time, mostly by me going all over the place, that if we have a lot of empty threads or old threads, we could tie them back up or just move on, whatever. So what do we got tonight?
Um, well, last time we talked about the psychology of Disney, and you did a lot of work and explained to us a lot about Carl Jung and psychology of Disney. And I remembered that in my first book, I wrote this article right here. I don't know if you can read it.
What? Mind-blowing psychology.
Psychology Inc. So the
I see a lot of
corporatization
logos.
of psychology, and it says who has the monopoly on life, right? And in this chapter, we talk all about Sigmund Freud and Edward Bernays and his work on shaping popular culture as we know it today. And I wanted to play this TikTok just to start us off because it was so poignant that we're talking about Disney adults, right? And how it has replaced the church in a lot of ways. Do you agree?
I do. And I would say it's replaced, though to be somewhat generous, I would say maybe they don't, it's replaced the Western religious thing for sure. And
Okay.
that maybe, well, just meaning like prior to me ever knowing about orthodoxy, I never would say that pop culture had replaced it. Because once you experience the church, you're like, oh, it's an entirely different kingdom, pun intended. But yeah, in terms of our sort of the world we live in, the Western world, for sure. I think pop culture, entertainmentism writ large, has become the new sort of religious container, maybe the best word. And I go as far as to say I think Disney is leading the path of that sort of thing.
Well, apparently you can now buy property like on Disney World or adjacent or very close to the actual park. And no, I'm not hating on this girl. She's just trying to live a wholesome life, probably with her favorite Disney characters. But I noticed that all of the things in her day-to-day life are it just revolves around these woke corporations. So let's play this real quick. This is total boomer tech. I'm just gonna play it on my phone and hold it up, and you guys can just deal with it.
So we moved to Disney World. Here's our moving vlog. We started with Starbucks, a puppuccino, and headed on our 3-hour drive to Orlando. Our new drive home literally goes under the Walt Disney World sign. Here's Maui's first time on Disney property. We got the keys, and here's Maui's reaction, seeing the house for the first time. So excited. Here's a sneak peek. We have lots of unpacking and decorating to do. We unloaded the U-Haul. Would it even be a moving day if we didn't make 2 trips to Target? Our new Target has an Ulta, which I'm super excited about. And here's some of the things that we got. The next day, we woke up and got Dunkin' and headed to Publix for our first grocery haul. This is definitely the nicest Publix I have ever been to. We unloaded our groceries and took Maui on a walk around the neighborhood. Our TV console got here from Amazon. I ended up just ordering 2 cabinets and we're going to push them together to make a TV console. I really like how it turned out and I'm excited to decorate it. We made a trip over to IKEA and got some fun things for the house. We've made more Target trips in the past few days than our whole entire life. You know you live close to Disney when you can see the fireworks. We ended up just getting a pizza, eating it on the floor because we didn't have our dining table or chairs yet. It's official.
So there is a day in the life of all of these corporation. She starts out at Starbucks, which you know is a major woke place.
Don't forget her puppuccino.
Cappuccino for the dog.
What is a puppuccino?
I think it's
You
just like
know?
cream in a cup.
Cream in a cup.
Yeah.
So, okay, go on.
Then she goes to Target, which you know, we can get into the symbolism really, really quick of corporate logos of Target. So back in like 2008, 2009, we did some DVDs about corporate logos and their esoteric meanings. And so all of the big corporations, they use like either Freemasonic symbols or Hermetic symbols in their corporate logos. So those are fun to decode. And Target would be the monad of Pythagoras, circumpunct of the
What a
Freemasons.
what?
It's called a circumpunct.
Hmm.
And of course,
You know,
Target.
it's funny. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, Target is on the front lines of this wokeness. So is Disney. And then what else? Oh, Ulta is inside Target now. And of course, they had that kind of scandal where they were choosing men to be their makeup spokespeople. And they lost a lot of customers and stock from that. And then they finished out their whole day with Domino's. So the entire thing was just gross corporations. And if you, we've been going to theme parks with this knowledge in mind for a long time. And it's interesting because you get in there and you're kind of trapped and you have to buy their food and spend your money on things that are inside the park because you can't get them anywhere else. And then we started noticing how America is like that. Like a theme park where your only options a lot of times are McDonald's, Arby's, Burger King, Domino's, what have you. Have you noticed that? So it's like a microcosm, macrocosm.
Yeah, it's the Disney dollar gone extreme.
Yeah.
Right? Some level. Well, you could say the Disney dollar, because remember they used to do Disney dollars back in the day? I don't know if they still do, but that's almost like the micro fractal of, you could just say the dollar, you know, but like I brought it up only because you got me thinking, yeah, when you're in Disneyland, you're so forced to only eat from the select troughs, you know. And it's funny, just a side note, maybe we could talk about it later because I sent you some pictures. This will sound so funny out of context for the audience, but I went to Disneyland last month.
Yeah.
Went for free because I have family that's retired there and I was visiting LA. But yeah, if we get to it tonight, we could talk about that because I saw some things, Jamie. I saw some things.
Well, let's talk about when we talk about Escape from Tomorrow, that movie.
Okay, and so then what you were just saying now, and then of course we'll get back to the video itself. Yes, I have noticed that absolutely, and shoot, there was I'm sure it'll come back to me. There's something I was going to say, but I'll refrain.
Well, let me tell you this. Let's start off before we get into the notes of these movies and documentaries, because we did a movie called Disenchanted Kingdom. We did Rescuers Down Under and Rescuers, and we did Escape from Tomorrow, Princess Protection Program. So we're going to do all those tonight. But before that, I wanted to ask you, have you heard about Selena Gomez, Justin Bieber, and Hailey Bieber?
No, I've not.
Okay, so this is the hottest gossip of all week, even above aliens.
I'm so out of the loop. I'm sorry, forgive me. I basically, if I had the choice, I would live in a cave. So like, I don't have any social media or any of that. So you're my vector for all of this. So thank you.
Because I get my news from Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
Cable TV, so that's where we get news. And all last week, TikTok was doing this extensive deep dive into this like Mean Girls situation. So here we go. The beginning, well, preface this with Selena Gomez used to date Justin Bieber, and they're like, she's a Disney girl, right? And they were the it couple of the 2000s, the cutest.
I knew this actually. I knew this.
And there was some betrayal. I don't know the details. There was some cheating, some betrayal. They broke up. He tried to get her back, but then Hailey Bieber, Kylie Jenner, and Kendall Jenner somehow got these kids to break up, and Hailey Bieber started dating Justin Bieber.
No relation, obviously,
No,
right?
they're married now, so that's why her name's
Oh,
Haley.
that's why she's Bieber.
Yeah,
Okay. I
yeah.
was like, wait, what was her last name before?
Baldwin. So she's Alex
Oh.
Baldwin's niece.
Mm.
Okay. So she's Hollywood insider
Strange bedfellows. Yeah.
bloodlines. Yeah. And TikTok just goes down this rabbit hole because Selena posts something about her eyebrows. She had a mishap with her eyebrows, and the other girl started making fun of her behind her back. And everyone jumped on Team Selena, and they're like, "You can't bully her like this. Like Hailey Bieber's a mean girl, and this is like you gotta stop." And in doing all this, in digging, they found out that Hailey Bieber was actually has these strange tendencies going way back to like copy Selena, like stalk her and get the same tattoos as her, wear the same
Mm.
outfits as her, like take her ex-boyfriend from her. And this can even go deeper because um, Justin and Selena, in my opinion, would be good candidates for the Monarch program. And you asked me about that. You texted me this week. You're like, "Have you ever heard of Monarch Mind Control and MK Ultra?" And I'm like,
Well, no, okay. For the record, I knew about MK Ultra, but I did not know about Bond. So you can roll your eyes, half roll your eyes, but not
okay.
full. Because no, I asked because and honestly, I want to stay here, but we still got to talk about that TikTok video too in the woke corporations. But I asked because when you wanted to watch Rescuers, and we'll get there too, I was curious, why do you want to watch Rescuers? What is it about this one, and we'll get there. But I was just kind of thinking about what was going on in that time and blah, blah, blah. And my friend was telling me that, 70s was big when the Monarch thing started. So he's saying that one of the motifs, and correct me here or add on, but one of the symbols or motifs of Monarch is sort of the Hall of Mirrors, or the illusion, or the many identities. That's about all I could kind of start from a point of departure on that. So yeah, if anything juiced you there, go for it.
What you need to do is get the books by Fritz Springmeier, and this is a redacted one. They don't really sell the ones that I read when I like 10, 12 years ago. They were just yellow printed out self-bound books that you could pick up just like at conventions and stuff. But I found these on Amazon, and this is what you need to get. These are the They Live glasses books. Like, I want to know what is going on in popular culture and why certain trends happen and why certain people do certain things. It's Fritz Springmeier's How to Make Your Own Undetectable Illuminati Mind Control Slave and Deeper Insights in the Illuminati Formula. These will tell you so much about what's happening. And in one of these books, he talks about sometimes when they put these people in the program, they'll do what's called twinning, which is send two kids into the same projects and like integrate their psyches together somehow.
Weird Adam and Eve kind of. I'm not trying to make a one-to-one. Just immediately, I thought about picking your twin, making your mate.
Yeah, so it could be a girl or boy, but I'm thinking Justin and Selena may have gone through this program together. And Hailey Bieber, when she comes in, she comes from the Hillsong group, which is a super culty church.
Oh, can I cut in?
Yeah.
So do you think that Justin and Selena, they wouldn't know they were in any program like this, would they? Or would they?
Not necessarily. Some of their alters might know, but their core personality would not be aware.
Okay, so tell me about the altar and what that is, because I don't know what that is.
So if you torture somebody so severely, our brains have this self-defense mechanism where it will shut down and be like amnesic barriers, and it'll be like, this isn't happening to me, it's happening to someone else. And your mind can create another personality. This is an amazing feature of the brain, but it's really exposed, and they learn how to do this in Nazi Germany.
I'll just, so I don't speak outside my experience, but the risk of sounding a tad crazy, I can relate from personal experience. Okay. Not necessarily going off the deep end kind of crazy, but just just as becoming really sensitive to the dimensions of ourselves and how we could be a different person at different times of day, different times a year in the company of other people after we experience some certain event or relationship with someone suddenly where, people say, what got into you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know what came over me, quote unquote, So I think to an extent, yeah, again, maybe I won't speak beyond myself, but I know I could relate to some experience of dissociation for sure. Which, if I may say, I think a lot of that has to do with being disincarnate. I think as we as a culture move out of the physical carbon body and into a chip body, the digital etheric one, we will see more and more dissociations going on
Oh, definitely.
among celebrities and common lay people like you and I.
So basically, in a nutshell, it's trying to take a person from a young age and make them into a programmable robot that does whatever you want them to do. And their different personalities have different tasks. They can be a spy, they can be an assassin, they can be a sex worker, they can be a pop star, whatever you want them to be.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Go on.
So Justin and Selena have these red flags that I would say that they might have been a part of this, right? Hailey Bieber, I don't know exactly, but her like single white female behavior towards Selena is so weird. And it lost her 1 million followers on Instagram. Once all of this started coming out, people are like, we do not like her anymore. But in my opinion, maybe Hailey could have been sent as some kind of like handler to get Justin away from Selena for some reason. I'm just putting another layer onto the giant pile of gossip that has gone down about this trio. And all of the psychologists are weighing in and they're like, Justin and Hailey are narcissists and Selena's being used in triangulation. And it's just been like this people all week. So I had to mention.
Sure. And so for sort of getting a general picture, it's sort of a love triangle with the possibility of interference from exterior forces.
Yes. And arranging marriages and trying to get Justin back on track, what he needs to be doing.
Well, my broadest reflection on that is like looking at sort of the vast scope of human time. Isn't it strange that we're back, even if it's covert and occult, back to arranged marriages? Like what happened to the man and woman able to make the free choice to come together in communion, And I'm not trying to imply that it's this massive pattern going on and it's happening. But when you think about the history of the Western culture, when we moved out of these sort of group, I don't want to say group, but like familial arranged marriages into the freedom of choosing whoever it is you want to marry. What a funny inversion that almost unconsciously we were coming back to these, the lack of autonomy, the lack of choice in a person to even choose their mate, you could say.
And what about Kanye? What happened to him? Like he was going around doing all those interviews and then he disappeared for a couple of weeks and he came back with a brand new wife that looks like Kim Kardashian and he's back shopping at Balenciaga and doing all the things that, the establishment would want him to do. And he's
right.
So it's like, and he said, if this ever happens to me, they've like pre-programmed me or they replaced me or something's going wrong. And all of these celebrities, whenever they go into rehab, when they come out, they're different. They're what his trainer got in trouble. Do you remember that?
No. Though you're inspiring me to pay more attention to some of these things going on because this is intriguing.
Kanye
Tell me.
Oh gosh, I did a show and I mentioned this. A doctor or his trainer was like, if you don't fall in line, we're gonna put you back in rehab and shoot you with drugs and you'll never see your kids and you won't even have them. And all of a sudden that's what happened. So it's like, whoa, they really can do that right in front of us.
Yeah, that's kind of scary, huh?
Yeah. What did you think of that TikTok?
Yeah, so the TikTok video, honestly, my first impression was I wonder how that man feels. I wonder if he's happy in his Disney marriage. I don't know. It seems like that. My heart went out to that dude walking his dog. I was like, this guy seems kind of derpy, not derpy, but sad, I should say. Anyways, I know it's the fake plants from IKEA. Gotta get the stuff ready.
Yeah.
And but again, like I'm not on TikTok or any of that stuff. So what? Not like I've never seen one before. I'm not that out there. But what blows my mind is like how much time is spent framing, setting up all these the U-Haul boxes.
Oh
Just
yeah.
like cut, 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 cut. And like the main takeaway I have from there is well, I want to ask you a question so I don't forget it, and then I'll say my thing and then you can answer it. Why are the corporations woke versus not woke?
Mhm.
I guess you go ahead if you want, or because I'm totally with you on board of like the corporate idol and them almost being rather, I wouldn't say worship, but venerating these icons and these symbols, so to speak. But I guess I'm wondering, like, is there any, yeah, I obviously know when corporations are woke, they're shooting a certain message, but is there something else beyond their sort of programming and the messaging that you would say makes it more woke than a not woke corporation, or is it sort of the messaging that they're
I think they're pretty obvious when they do their campaigns with men in makeup and uh Target was the whole on the forefront of like the gender bathrooms. Um and I don't know why everyone loves Target so much. It's pretty crappy store in my
it's
opinion.
funny. Yeah, it's funny up here because where I live up in the redwoods, we have some corporations, but not a lot really. It's not a they don't love them up here, but we do have a Target, and
Uh-huh.
everybody, it's like they call it Target because it's like this classy, like, oh, we're going to Target, it's so we're gonna drive 6 miles and go to it.
Because
But
it's
yeah,
supposed to be nicer than Walmart, but it's the same crap.
yeah, it's pretty budget. It's not that great. But
But the
go ahead.
American dream for like, a new mom or a young woman is your Starbucks and your Target and your Ulta and your Domino's. And it's just every
Yeah,
piece of that is toxic.
right. And oh yeah, I hear you. It's so sad, really. What I find is like not only the tragedy that our identities are so merged with this corporate symbol, which just, between you and I, how much better would it be if it was the church and the cross, that we are like, oh, the cross, oh, Mary, oh, the cheese fair,
Yeah.
oh, it's like
And
these
they
are the
can't
things
wait
that,
to get to Target. That's their happy place. And that's what I'm trying to say. And you nailed the nail on the head when why do we feel that way when we go to Target and not church?
yeah, I mean, that's the great mystery, right? And I told you before camera roll, but I got some charts maybe tonight, diagrams, maybe they'll help us with this. But it, what I also find quite telling or just revealing of our times is like I'm always so interested in the content of what people are putting out because in some ways the content is what used to be the environment, the way we live suddenly becomes inside a frame. So like for instance, we used to just live in villages. Now you can go check out an old village and see how people used to live. We used to just live in landscapes. Now we have landscape painting.
Mm.
Anytime an environment becomes obsolete, it becomes the figure of a new environment. So what's going on in our world, especially with social media, is this. I feel something. I feel something. I feel something. I have nerves. I'm a human being. Oh, look, I actually have responses and affect to things that go on in the world. So, like, on some level, what I'm trying to say, and I'll just say it less charitably, is I think we're so numbed of how to processing our emotions and our feelings, you could say, that they now become exteriorized to the point where we then have to share that we have to extrovertedly make it say what it is. Oh, I'm feeling something. I'm eating food. I'm upset. It's like
Mm.
the idea of internal processing is now been obsolete because we have our own internal processors of our phones to do all that for us. So what then becomes the content, the figure of the new environment is the feelings, my affects, my emotions, my thoughts at the moment as I'm just streaming them, you know? So you tie that in, sort of just the general abstract idea that the human beings constantly airing their feelings and their nerves, their central nervous system is just out there for all of us to encounter, plus all the religious sensibility of our culture, the lack of religion, the searching for it, the need for icons and symbols to give us juice. And you got the Disney adult, man. Like, and that's just only one part of the iceberg. Like, there's so many threads that goes into making that modern person. But yeah, going to the store, paying tribute to these idols, so to speak. Like what she said in the video, it's not a real day unless you go to Target twice.
Yeah.
It's like you gotta do your round. This temple is so wonderful that we just have to go and give more tribute.
Exactly.
And like what I mentioned in our texting was that, comically, of course, is like what makes Disney just as bad and equal to all these corporations is it is not totalitarian enough. Because if you were really in the Disney world, you wouldn't ever have to go to Target. You wouldn't have to go to Domino's. You just go get your Mickey pizza. Like we were first saying in this conversation, it sucks that you're forced to eat. You have such fewer choices, but I say this paradoxically, the quote benefit is that you're united under one symbol. See, like that's the beauty of our church and Orthodoxy, is that we have our one symbol, the cross, and obviously so many other symbols, but we have our one symbol that unites so many things, different nations, different people, all the saints, different times of history. And it's like, and none of us are trying to compete saying like, oh, Theotokos is better than, Nina of Georgia, or Mary Magdalene's better than Mary of Egypt. It's none of this sort of playing favorites, because we have an actual hierarchy. Where in the Disney religion, if we want to call it that, like,
sure,
it's the symbol is at the top and all tribute goes to Disney. But the thing is as an entity itself, it doesn't have its hands into everything yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, and if it doesn't, let me know.
Well, we're trying to track that. It almost does, because
okay.
Some people would be like, why is it problematic to live at Disney? And I've talked about this so many times. It's not just a theme park, it's like a science experiment. And it's a commercial, and it is testing on people. I mean, do you think Monsanto is a good corporation?
I mean, that's that's like what's really hard about corporations, because I believe it's like hard, because I'm so willing to play the both and game. I mean, yes, in my heart of hearts, I revolt. I shudder at the thought of all this. But then there's this strange paradox where it's ran by human beings just like you and me. And it's hard, because it's like, I doubt the people on the floor at Monsanto are like, yeah, we're going to brainwash everybody,
No, they don't know what's happening.
Right. And yet we all participate in this involuntarily, probably, so it's like,
yeah. A corporation in itself is a weird, like, magical alchemical thing. It's like a golem, or, a homunculus or something. It's a living body that's made up of living bodies, but it's not a person. And then you can get deeper into those studies that, your birth certificate makes you a little corporation. America's just a corporation for the British Crown. And like, this is the old school conspiracy, but.
Well, go ahead.
Well, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say the corporation, it's very much like a church, lowercase c, just the body, like you just said, of all these individuals, and yet at the same time they're one thing. And I'll tell you, I work for corporate, and like the things that are going on now, especially in like the woke world, it's like, and man, I remember one day when I was working, they brought in an altar for Dia de los Muertos. Because it's like, let's all celebrate this now, It's like, what if there's an altar? What if there was a a menorah on this altar, or God forbid, a crucifix. Like, would we be so willing to bring this into the workplace, you know?
Mhm.
And so it's this strange, like, it makes me very uncomfortable because it's like, think about all these people that actually celebrate, let's say they're not Orthodox Christians or whatever. It's like people that have these cultural traditions that so many of these companies are just like, oh, you're that group of people that's not entirely white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Like, we better take what is important, precious to you, and put our corporate spin on it so that you'll be able to enjoy it, you know, and
Mhm.
you can be a part of the world while still celebrating your traditions. And I just find it disrespectful,
I'm
frankly.
surprised more people don't see through that manipulation process of like being pandered to and almost
So
embarrassed.
yeah, since we're here, we'll just jump into it at least for a second. But like when I went to Disneyland, that was one of the things that was really shocking to me. And I guess if I were to not like be so broad but more specific, is at California Adventure only, not at Disneyland they did this, but at California Adventure, it's almost like they knew too, they couldn't bring this into Disneyland itself. But at California Adventure, they were celebrating the Lunar New Year, right?
Mhm.
And so they were celebrating, which just to be clear, if anybody wants to talk poo, like I have nothing against celebrating the Lunar New Year, you know, but what's interesting is the way Disney is spinning it. So what they did is like throughout the park for a couple of months, they had all these different stands that you'd like go around and try all the various ethnic foods, right? And again, it's all like super shrinkflation style menus, you know.
Mhm.
But what I found really most offensive, frankly, was like all the merchandise, all of that kind of stuff. And they took like for the different cultures, you could say Vietnamese, Filipino, Chinese. I don't think they really messed with Japan, but like they had different characters symbolizing one, like you're the rabbit, you're the cat. But the thing is they were like they used the Oswald. You remember Oswald? He's like the
Mhm.
original Mickey Mouse. So they
Mhm.
took him for the rat, or I'm sorry, the rabbit. They took some made up cat thing that looks just like it, but with cat ears. And then they like would brand the country's name on it. And then it's just crazy because they were doling out so much merchandise with Oswald the Rabbit, you know, and You're the Rabbit. And it's like everything would have, you know, all the rabbits from every Disney movie would all be on a cup or on a mug together. And it
Mhm.
all had like Asian flair to it. And I was just like, this just like, let's just spin it a different way. If I was like, this was all Orthodox Christian stuff they're selling to me, I'd be so offended, you know,
Mm.
that hearing stuff
Mhm.
like this. Like, and it's funny because they don't mess with the cross. Like, I'm
So
serious. Like, go ahead.
they're the ones who are actually doing like embarrassing cultural appropriation.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. And people are just giving over money hand and foot to do it, you know.
Mhm.
And what was alarming to me, maybe alarming is too strong of a word, but just picking up on sort of patterns and things I hear was how much people were just excited that it was happening. Oh, isn't this great? They're doing Lunar New Year. Isn't it awesome? They're doing Lunar New Year. And I'm thinking like, no, I want Disneyland. Like I come to Disneyland to like not have the real world broken into it at all, you know? Like
Is that a
I
Chinese thing?
I
Or
mean, they were using Vietnamese too. Like this is where I just totally confess my ignorance here for sure. But like they were doing a Vietnamese one and a Chinese one relating to the cat and the rabbit.
okay.
Um, yeah.
Well, let's talk about this documentary that we watched. This
Did
just
you,
came
you
out.
want to, I'm sorry, did you want to talk more about Haley and Selena and
No,
Princess?
I was just wanting to get my 2 cents in there that I think that these kids have a lot more going on than what meets the eye as far as being part of this monarch mind control program.
Well, I was, and we could also talk about Princess Protection Program. That was a trip watching that movie. Like even right down to like kind of the eyes wide shut masks at the end when they're
Yeah.
like at the so. But my, I mean, I could have a few things to say, but the one takeaway I had of that movie was like I have not seen a Disney Channel movie since I was like a kid.
Uh-huh.
So it's shocking. Like I guess I've just become an older church lady, older than I thought at a young age. But like I was so aghast by just the sexualizing of these young teenage girls and like the programming and realizing like even though it's not overtly going that route, but just like putting them in these little shorts and all this like little stuff that's just like wow, like these chicks are like 14 years old at this point, you know, and it's
Mhm.
like you're saying about the grooming. I was just so shocked to like seeing it again. It's like a 15-year-old movie at this point. It's like I'm so behind the eight ball with it that it's like I was just kind of like, wow, like talk about program, you know, like yeah, I don't know. I felt bad. I just felt really bad for these actors being
Well,
tied into the
let's talk
thing.
about Princess Protection Program since we're talking about it. I got my notes on that. So this is a 2009 Disney Channel movie starring Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez. And Demi Lovato's latest album, have you seen the cover of that?
I have.
So it's her on a filthy mattress that's shaped like a cross, and she's in like the satanic barbed wire sexual gross pose. And anybody else's religion, they would be offended. You know, she's not like humping Islam's you know, like they
Right.
would never do that, but it's okay to
Yeah.
make a cross into a filthy mattress for fornicating on or whatever you're doing.
Oh.
So there's her, and she also has gone like I think the kind of non-binary route. And then Selena Gomez is in this, and she's kind of the tomboy. And then the opening sequence song, I don't know if you caught this. It was, I don't know who sang it. It sounded like Dollar Store Sheryl Crow to me, but the song was "You Can Do What You Want to Do."
I did notice that one.
Does that sound
I
familiar?
did. Go ahead, say more.
So, well, that's the dictum of Thelema, Aleister Crowley's religion of Hollywood that we talk about all the time. So, do what thou
Mm.
wilt.
Oh, right. Do what thou wilt. Yeah,
Yeah,
Crowley.
it's the
For sure.
opening sequence song of that movie.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That is funny. Um, it's funny. I was looking up Selena and Demi Lovato afterwards, just like looking on their Instagram. Man, Demi's got nothing compared to Selena when it comes to followers and all this stuff. Like, what did something happen there? Has she just always been less popular? Or did she like,
Um,
because I know, if I may say one last thing,
yeah.
I saw one video of her where she basically was like, "Oh, I want to basically be an alien wife," and like basically said she was like so wanted to have an alien boyfriend to like merge with, and I
Oh,
was like,
weird.
"That's interesting."
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in the within the last year or so for sure.
Okay. Well, that fits. I know Selena's had more hit records than Demi Lovato, and she was on Wizards of Waverly Place. That was a really popular Disney Channel TV show. But in Princess Protection Program, she plays this little girl named Carter, who's like a bayou kid, a little tomboyish, you know, not a princess.
Right.
And her dad, a single dad, his name is Major Mason, like Freemason.
Freemason.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he works at the Princess Protection Program, which is this like underground facility that has all of these princesses being put into different like witness protection. Basically, they're in danger, and then they go into the program and they're put into normal lives. So Demi Lovato is the princess of this like fictional country. It's kind of like a Spanish flavor.
Yeah, I loved how again, like I'm not trying to judge, but just how pagan it was. Like they even had those like laurel wreaths they like wore at the dinner. Do you remember that scene when she like
Oh
makes
yeah.
dinner? They're all wearing like yeah. I was like,
So
oh, that's very
you're
interesting.
mentioning the year of the moon, and this her country's called Costa Luna, and she's like, it's not on most maps. Like that's really weird. And Luna is the moon, and Selena is a moon goddess.
Mm.
Um, and then they have this like General Magnus Kane. What do you make of that name?
Yeah, what
Is
was
the
it? Was it
antagonist?
Magnus Kane? It
Hmm?
was Kane was his
Yeah.
last name?
Hmm.
I mean, look, it's just so obvious. Like there's some sort of Kane parallel, you know, but without reaching too far into like what it would all mean, I my takeaway from that movie, it's hard to say because like I'm honestly kind of transitioning the way that I used to analyze film, where I used to be far less judgmental, where I'd almost see everything in the movie as like, let's say it all exists inside one space. And on a movie, everything in the movie is complete. There's nothing lacking. So anytime there's a character who's without something, some other character will complement it. And together all the characters will create some sort of whole through the movie, and you'll be able to see the different dynamics of, you could say, maybe these splinter personalities, if you want to say it that way, or different parts of our psyche, how they all interact. And ideally they find some sort of union by the end of the film, where the left hand learns from the right, so to speak, and they come together. So it's hard because like my inclination is to sort of just start looking for like, okay, where's the happy end? Where's the resolution? How do things come together, so to speak? And yet there's so many other layers of like stuff you're talking about with the way they use certain words and names and songs to like so obviously create more texture to these films. So it's like, I guess my only real takeaway from it was like, it's some sort of obvious movie situation where the shadow in the ego personality sort of are learning from each other. And so it's like Selena could represent sort of this more ambiguous, less defined, maybe feminine character, where the princess then sort of teaches her about princessness and the feminine, while she teaches her about being a regular person, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's like,
that was the gist of it. And it's funny because I hate it when I get touched by these things.
I got touched too at
You
the
know, you
end.
get
I won't
choked up
lie.
and you're like,
I won't lie.
no, they got me. But I was just gonna say Magnus Kane, he's like some kind of dictator, but also for the Republic. So he's this weird character, but Magnus is very close to Magus, which is a
I was
magician.
just thinking that as you said that. Well, and to
Yeah.
your point, like, because man, I totally watch these films too. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting name. That's an interesting thing. Why are they doing this? Why is that happening? And so it's like, I'm with you that there's this like, without being too judgy, shadowy, I don't want to say sinister, but some sort of shadowed, hidden, occult thing going on. I think the producers and makers of these films are so unaware that they are tapping into these things. And I think that's what makes it scarier. Like, I really think that, like, well, I don't know. See, it'd be an interesting.
I think they are aware, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm on team sinister.
Yeah.
It's
Well, that's the thing is like, I believe fundamentally that yes, like if we're going to talk the deepest layers of things, deep principalities and powers are at the very bottom for good and bad. But it gets interesting when it percolates up through the different layers, you could say, of our consciousness. So by the time it gets to somebody, how many layers of sort of bedrock has it gone through from, to just say it in a way, demons to Disney, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why for me, because yeah, I have a strong moral compass. I do. Like, and so it's really, I have fun talking because I'm like, yes, this sucks. I hate this. Yes, that's bad. That's evil. That's good. But at the same time, I get myself into trouble that way. And so when I try to bring it back to the level of technology, that's what's so fascinating to me, because technology on some level is neutral. It's like at some level, a hammer is really different depending on whether you use it to build a house or discombobulate somebody over the head with it. And so on some level, when I'm going to start weighing in on things going on in the culture, I'm first and foremost going to look at what is the technology environment that this film is made in? What time period is it representing? What are the sort of tools that is making this myth, this story even possible? And before I'm going to jump and say, yes, somebody's ruling the world and controlling it, I'm going to say, well, what tools are they using? Because, you know, I don't want to be too controversial, so I'll go back in time and talk about something I know nothing about. But it's like, would Napoleon have been successful if he was on the radio? Or was it something that had to happen based on his time and place? You know, could Trump have been elected 30 years ago? Or was social media the tool that allowed this type of president to come into the office,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
Because even though social media was during the time of Obama, Trump was the first one who's actually tweeting his own tweets from the toilet, you know?
Mhm.
So by the time we get to Trump, Twitter is already directly in the hands of the president. And so that technology itself changes the whole game of politics before we even start talking about who's doing what to who. So
Mhm.
I'm with you on all that stuff. I guess I believe there's a deeper layer of the tools we use that then inform these mythologies, these religions we create, you know? And so I guess I'm totally with you in the sense that like the occultism run rampant over the last century and it's just going to continue going. I really believe it will. Like the more and more we move in this discarnate, quote unquote, spiritual world, we're going to see more and more of this crazy occultism. So I'm not surprised at all that even in a Disney Channel original movie, they have things like the Selena Goddess and Costa Luna, the Hidden Country, and the Republic Takeover, the hardware. See, it's
Mhm.
interesting now that we're in this digital world where we're all colonized by tyrant software. Of course, we will have a lot of movies that show on a hardware level the tyrant coming in and taking over. Because
Mhm.
in some way that environment's obsolesced. Like you can't really have a government coup in that way because it's way easier just to take the people over through Facebook and digital mind control, if you want to say it like that.
Mhm.
Sorry, I threw a lot out there right now.
Oh, that's okay. So he's like the masculine principle, I feel like, the dictator in this movie. Aside from the single dad, it's the Republican Democratic man against the royalty or the moon goddess in of Costa Luna. And she goes to Louisiana where she has to unlearn her royal manners. Now, I really appreciated like some of her responses and lines to things because it's kind of in the ballpark of what I've been thinking about sovereignty versus
Hmm,
being royalty versus just being a princess, like a
hmm.
pink Paris Hilton princess or something. That we need
Say
to
more about that between royalty and being a princess.
just being a sovereign person with boundaries. Like I know who I am. I don't take part in this, and this because I'm better than that. That not an attitude of like I'm better, but I don't do these things.
Well, yeah, and forgive me if I make it a little churchy here, but it's because your will is aligned to God's. And
Mhm.
so you're going to fall into doing, I mean, look, we all sin, we all have our mistakes, we do, but like you're not going to associate yourself and do things with things that you know are frankly not of God.
Yeah, I mean, if your father
So
was a
simple,
king,
you know?
would you have this mentality of low self-esteem where you have to get an OnlyFans or you have to uh, cater to
Ah,
that to get
are
attention?
you are you saying sort of or implying that royalty under a true king doesn't need OnlyFans, where the princess, quote unquote, may be one more who's would move to that direction?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
And saying no to, stabs in your arm or just standing up for yourself against the New World Order, like that's a sovereign thing. Um,
Do you
there's
see any of that? Do you
hmm?
see any of that going on, like in the triangle we were talking about earlier, with people not being able to stand up and people then ganging up on certain people? We were talking about the Disney Channel kids. I'm hearing a bit of that in there too. The sort of like sovereignty to.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think Selena's acted very classy in this whole thing. She hasn't really got into the fray. She's let other people like defend her. So she's taking the high road for
So
sure.
I absolutely have no context for their lives, but the one, well, looking at her Instagram for just a couple minutes, I got that vibe too. I was like, Selena seems like a classy person. Maybe not totally, of course, but like
Yeah.
at least in terms of a public image. I was like, compared to some of these other Disney Channel people I've definitely seen over the years, like you don't hear much from her, I guess, like on some level. But again, I don't know. I'm so out of the loop that that was just like my intuition without
Well,
really having
it's
data.
funny because in Princess Protection Program, there's a group of mean girls who are trying to embarrass the Demi Lovato princess character. And there's a scene where she makes a mess in a yogurt shop and she has to walk out in front of all the kids that are laughing at her. And she walks out with her head high and she says, I'm not a fool and you can't make me into something I'm not. Any other kid would just break down and cry and,
Man, I like that scene. I'll be honest. I was like, that's some good stuff right
yeah,
there.
like straight your ground and, know who you are. And I appreciated that attitude towards Princess.
So that's a great moment of like what I'm gonna say it out loud so I don't forget, but we should go back to the dad and the tyrant. There's something there. But
You mean
that's
the
such a great
dictator?
yeah, the dictator.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll just pit there for a second. I guess my only comment is there's definitely that's again a shadow thing. You have the super good dad who's going infiltrating covert. He's the guy that goes deep down in the underground, right, to the Princess Protection Program. Just saying symbolically, he's more of like the dad that goes inside, subverts. Maybe he breaks the rules because he loves his daughter so much and he's a cool dad. And then on the other side, you have of that same dynamic, the tyrant king, who's above ground, ruling from his single place, extending it outwards without moving, rather than the mission dad who moves around through different areas himself. He's more dynamic process, where the king guy is more stasis.
So the dictator is like male ego, kind of, and then
What?
the other dad is like undercover.
Yeah, maybe they both are. I would say maybe just I mean we could spend, 20 minutes on this, but like I would say they definitely represent a polarity between each other of some sort of ego and shadow, things that are known and things that are unknown. And so the two together sort of, like I was saying, represent this whole picture of dad. But what's interesting about Princess Protection is that there's no mom in the movie. So on some level, all of the masculine characters, potentials, energies, however you want to say it, are going to be lopsided. There'll be some other, like I was talking about filling the void and there always being wholeness. What I love watching these movies is like, okay, if there's no mother figure, no father figure, where is that symbol going to be expressed? How will the mother be expressed in Princess Protection Program when there is no mother? And I don't know if I really have an answer to that yet. I'd have to think more about it.
There is always a scene in teen movies where it's always about like the big dance. There's an event, a game, homecoming. So the climax of this movie is at homecoming. You mentioned they all arrive with their Venetian eyes wide shut masks on.
Yeah.
And this got me thinking about the May Queens. So that's really where the homecoming queen tradition comes from, is the Druid, Maypole, and the May Queen. And you mentioned she had the flower crown and everything, so that's a very Druidic May Queen.
Yeah, and forgive me, I'm basing my May Queen stuff off Midsummer. It's not an area I've studied much, but that's almost like some sort of virgin sacrifice kind of deal, or at least is there often human sacrifice involved in that traditionally, or is that just like more of a cinematic thing they were going for to make it horror? Do you know?
I would say yes. Like, of all the things that I know, I think it's a Wicker Man
situation.
Yeah.
For girls usually though.
I think she's probably like, I don't know much about Druid rituals. I haven't studied that a lot, but she's probably someone they would all be with, or everybody is together in a way that you don't know whose child is whose.
Man, that's funny. That this is a tangent now, but it's only reminding me of a lot of stuff when I was studying more of like, yeah, let's say tribal practices and the sort of more shamanic world, and how like, I mean, just frankly, did you ever do time back in the day listening to like Terrence McKenna?
Oh yeah, I put
Okay.
in my notes here somewhere to talk about
Really?
animism. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's just I was remembering when I was listening to Terrence McKenna back in the day that he was always trying to say how great mushrooms were by saying it's one of those things that, oh yeah, and when you eat a certain amount, everybody can have an orgy together. And then he was all trying to be anti-patriarchy and trying to say we got to get rid of the patriarchy kind of deal. So he was saying that's one of the great things about these orgiastic cults is you don't know who any of the parents are. So just tying it into what you're saying there. But before I forget, what I was going to say before we went back to the dad, that part with where she's walking out of the ice cream parlor and she's holding her head high with all that dignity. That's one of those crazy moments where, like, when I was talking about, and maybe I should just bust out the diagram if we want to go there, but
what is it?
Okay. So this is what I was saying about the way that the Western Christian psyche, will just be more direct, Disney, the Disney world, will have so much Christian overtones, right? That moment was such a Christ moment where she's totally humiliated, all these things, and she's wearing her robe of glory, all the ice cream, walking down, totally beaten down the alley, so to speak. But yet, nothing else about it is Christian, right? Like we were talking about, these motifs, the themes, the overriding things in the movie, the fact, I think, it was in Rescuers. I noticed in Rescuers they prayed but didn't pray to God. I thought that was very interesting, one of the characters. But anyways, just saying, this is what I'm trying to say is, like, I think we will see, as isn't like my original thought here, but I think we're going to see more and more of these things. I mean, they've already been going on for like several decades, but where you're going to see this Christian overtones totally painted in pagan aesthetics, or a mixture of these sorts of things.
Or just a big blob beast of ecumenism where you just
totally like this syncretized perennial. Yeah, totally. But that's the thing, is what's going to make, and just like you're saying about the Demi Lovato cover that makes it so scandalous, is we live in this world where Christians will go buy that album, right? And it's like, on one hand, that's what Christianity faces as a challenge, is how much it's able to be, quote unquote, co-opted by anything, and still be Christian. It's like, oh no, it's okay. These things can be bedfellows together. And it's like, I don't know if they can,
right. Well, let's talk about this documentary called Disenchanted Kingdom 2023. What did you think of that one?
Yeah, I had a lot of notes on that one. I had one big takeaway. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll just read down my notes. They might not sound so poetic. And then if there's I just haven't looked at them in a week. So
you say one note and then I'll say one.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
You can't have both Disney and Christ, period.
Right.
In other words, even the documentary interviewees, which I gotta be honest, although I was with it, they didn't interview anybody from the other side. It was a very one-sided documentary in terms of everybody they interviewed. And the guy was like, "Do you think Disney should make entertainment or this?" And he's like, "Obviously that one, So it was an interesting documentary, but still, I found it very edifying. So I said, you can't have Disney and Christ, period. In other words, even the documentary interviewees seem to, quote unquote, want Disney, albeit their nostalgic memories of Disney. In other words, Western Christianity has a Disney parasite inside. A bug, a Jiminy Cricket, you could say.
Yeah.
So go on. Your turn.
Well, they started out talking about how this is the family network. And we touched upon this last time. Like, Disney has carte blanche in any Christian home just because of who they think they are. And they're known as the wholesome studio. But now they're very aggressive in politics, even to the point of becoming groomers.
Yeah. So I'm glad you got to anti-family. This was probably the biggest note. This may take us a little elsewhere. So were there a couple other, we should go back to anti-family and maybe climax to that. Were there some other things you want to talk about also in that documentary?
Yeah, I have a whole page on it. So they were talking about, this is a documentary from the Catholic League. So that is their point of view. And they're very big on family, Catholic are. And
which, nothing wrong against that. I got nothing against that.
Yeah.
Pro family for sure.
But but now this thing that used to bring families together is the anti-family network, and it's more of the sexuality and gender ideology programming network.
Yeah, I was shocked. I was pretty well. I shouldn't have been shocked because I even heard you talk about it, but I was shocked when that woman in her leaked Zoom meetings
Mm-hmm.
was basically like, "Oh, I have an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to queerify everything I get my hands on, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't care."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe I'm being a little too extreme, but that's basically how I took it when I
No,
watched her.
that's what happened. And this is an event that caught, okay, so I know a pastor that I've known since I was 18. So more than 20 years. And for almost the entire time I've known him, I'm like, Disney is bad. You need to tell your congregation, like, we don't go to Disneyland and stuff like that. So it was always
Unless
anti-Disney.
we're spies, unless we're doing spy work.
Exactly. Reconnaissance. And he would just blow me off. But then when this happened, when that they caught that lady on that Zoom call, he was like, "You were right the whole time." And I'm like, "See?" Okay. Anyways, so yeah, there was this parental rights and education bill, and the LGBTQ employees of Disneyland strike to get the company involved, and the radical activists are the ones that started to call it the Don't Say JAY bill. And 60% of Disney's customers did not appreciate Disney's involvement in fighting the parental rights view. It was a very small, radicalized group inside of Walt Disney World that got the
Got that going.
CEOs involved in this.
Right. Just to be clear, what you're saying, because I watched it too. I guess I forgot. Most people didn't want this campaign to be going on.
Yeah, they didn't. They wanted Disney and politics separate. They want, like you
Totally.
said, I want to be at Disneyland, not at.
I mean, like, yeah, I even said it on camera. Even when I go to that crazy place, I would like that stuff to be separated. Man, if I may, and people just know at this point, I talk in footnotes, forgive me. But when I was there, I saw this very interesting T-shirt. Like, all the like variant American flags going on now these days, with all the stripes and all that stuff. There was like this tattered flag, vertical, and with the red band in the middle was Darth Vader with his Sith lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's an interesting like merging of symbols there.
Mm-hmm.
You got Disney, dark side, Red Lives Matter, if that's the thing, I don't know, whatever. In America, it was like, well, all brought to you by China sweatshops, by the way.
Exactly.
Let's not forget, like.
I do have a picture, I think it's in my first book, about how, yeah, all of these merchandise and toys are not made by Santa's elves. They're made in China at sweatshops.
Oh, good Lord.
And even the
Bring it up, sir. Let me see. Yeah.
So, and I've got a quote by Anton LaVey himself, who says, "When things become precious and people expendable, that's the horror of the true satanic society. That's when the nightmare begins." So you have all these people in sweatshops making this crap. They're expendable. But
It's funny you even have a Satanist delivering that quote.
Oh yeah, he's got a lot of gems like that. Like, he's said that the television is the satanic altar.
I think Elder Paiso said that too.
Yeah.
Saint Paisios. Yeah, we could do a whole show on television. But okay. I have a couple comments too, of course. Do you want some more you wanted to go on?
Yeah, so now the governor of Florida, DeSantis, is trying to get Disney World's special tax status and other privileges repealed.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because, like, I mean, honestly, I don't really participate in politics, don't care really, but I was kind of like, go politics on this one on some level. It's like, what makes Disney have any claim to that sort of thing? It's like, it's this funny way that we as a culture, we don't want real religion, we don't want suffering, we don't want the cross, we don't want any of that. We just want to be happy. And if we know that there's a big giant place at Disney World that can make us happy, we are so willing to bypass so many rules and regulations we would put on anybody else for the sake of this nostalgic happiness. So it's like on some level, like I don't want to say I'm glad, I'm good for the, you know, I don't have that much of a dog in the fight, but like, yeah, about time they get taxed, you know? It's like they've only been around there for like what, 50 years?
Mhm.
They've been in Florida being exempt from all that stuff.
Well, Disney World was made in connection with the CIA, and I think we talked about that a little bit last
Maybe
time.
a little, but to be too self-aware, I probably cut us off from there. Do you want us to say a little more about that?
Sure. So the ex-president Michael Ovitz once said that Disney isn't a company as much as it is a nation state, just like
When
the
did you say that?
Vatican or DC.
When was that?
I don't know exactly. You'll have to Google that. I just have
Sure.
like these
What was his name?
Disney card, Michael Ovitz, Ovitz.
Okay, go on.
So it had its own law enforcement emergency 911 system and everything. And then um, the CIA Operation Mockingbird was designed to manipulate news media for propaganda. And they spent millions per year hiring journalists from Disney and ABC and others to promote their point of view. Um, Files obtained through the FOIA revealed that the Department of Defense and CIA backed and influenced hundreds of movies and TV shows owned by the Walt Disney Company. Disney special effects wizard Robert Cary Broughton created award-winning films for both Disney and the OSS, which became the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have what we were talking about before, MK Ultra Artichoke Monarch, and then countless self-proclaimed victims of this trauma-based mind control testify to the use of Disney films in their programming. Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland are the staples, along with Fantasia. Many pop stars who exhibit signs of modern programming were once Mouseketeers, and Walt Disney and Alan Dulles are distant cousins.
Who's the guy? Who's cousins with Disney?
Alan Dulles, the creator of the CIA.
Oh, snap.
So
I wonder.
not just a theme park. This is a machine, a mind control machine. It could be used for human TRAFF, which we're going to talk about when we talk about Escape from Tomorrow. So much more going on underneath the veneer of your happy, wholesome Mickey Mouse. So they talk about these keys of their like Disney ethos. And what it's funny because once I worked at this company and they had me read this little booklet called Be Our Guest, which is like the Disney way of running your company and treating people.
Oh, I've heard of that book. I never read it though.
And so one of their keys, now they've added a fifth key of inclusion, which is only about LGBTQ. And they have to follow these rules of inclusion or else, and they discriminate against the unstabbed and Christians.
Yeah, it's funny. If you have more to say about discrimination against Christians overtly, I'd love to hear it. If you had something there. Otherwise,
I don't have a note, but talk about that.
Okay, yeah, because I was gonna say intuitively, I totally agree. Like, I don't really need proof from Disney to know that. It's like I was saying about the Lunar New Year thing. Like, and you go to Disneyland, they even have like in California Adventure, I was told because I wasn't there this time of year, but like around Christmas holiday season, they have one little storefront window. It's designated for Judaism. Some guy, you know, they put like fake names on all the windows and stuff, and this is Katz or Myers or whoever. And so it's like they have the one little Jewish section, right? But there's no single, they don't put crosses at Disneyland.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You can't ever go by a cross with a Mickey Mouse on it. And the thing is like, you shouldn't. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you shouldn't do that. But the point is they know they can't get away with stuff like that. It's like, on some level, man, if we had like, who knows how our conversations will go on, and if we really had what our wish, so to speak, or maybe not even what we wished, but like, I think at the end of the day, like Disney holds no power against the cross, like, and they know it too, or else they would be shelling out all this merchandise. But they know they wouldn't even take Orthodox Christians to push back against Christian Disney merging, and that's what makes me. Here I go saying that's what makes me. But what I find disturbing about that is the subjectivity of like, I know a lot of Western Christians who will absolutely tell you, I don't want Disney to put Mickey Mouse on a cross. but they will go to Disneyland, buy all the Disney merch, and then go to church on Sunday. And these two are just in totally separate categories where there's not even any question about one being the true God and one being just Mickey Mouse. They just don't see this sort of mythic, deeper relationship between symbols in general. But
Yes.
I think it's
Symbolism is lost on a lot, most people, I think.
right. And it's like, to be fair, like our culture has not really been interested in it for centuries, and it's like as I learn what a symbol is, like on a real primordial level, you could say at its heart, a symbol represents, like the word comes from the idea that like you used to have a thing that was whole and broken apart, and the two parties would go away, and then when they'd come back again, they'd bring the bolon, these two things thrown together to make the whole. So in many ways, a symbol is the invisible and the visible together. It's an icon. It's like what we call the icon. It's like when you look at a picture of Jay on your phone and he's not there, you kiss it, you're like, oh, Jay, I miss you. But he's not, there's an invisible person that's not there that your visible picture of Jay is standing in for.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting is like, well, an idol is basically just looking at the picture of Jay on your phone only and forgetting that there's a real person there in real life.
Right. This conformity, it's very, the diversity is conformity. It's very Orwellian, right?
Well, it's okay. Maybe we should talk. Maybe we should
Show
go.
me your chart.
Yeah, we have a few, but let's see the one that would probably be most appropriate. Yeah, it's funny. I'm wondering which one I want to pull out. Well, we'll do a couple. This one may be not quite off topic, and I'll send pictures of these to you, and you can put them in the video if you want.
Okay.
This is a chart of our technology over the years. Can you see it okay?
Yeah, tribal age, literate age, print age, electric age.
And then the
satellite.
Or digital, you could say, the one we're in now.
Now,
go ahead.
One thing before you start, this is the story of Spaceship Earth, the ride.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The Epcot ball.
Wonderful then. Great tie-in. The reason I bring this up tonight without going into a long, I guess we could always talk about it, but what's going on in our culture now is the tribal sensibilities are coming back in the electric era.
Okay.
So many of these qualities that we developed in the literate and print age, and when I say qualities, I mean the ways they make you see the world. So for instance, like print made it, just to be very obvious without going long into it, made the Bible possible in every language. Where in the literate era, it was only, at least in the West, in Latin. And that had a different way of the people being able to understand the Bible, because you had to either know Latin, have the money to get a Bible copied, or go to church and hear it. Mm-hmm. When print came and everybody could have their own Bible, this is what I was getting back to technology. On some level, the mere creation of the printing press, letting individuals have their Bible for themselves, is the end of the church. Because who needs to go to church when I have the Bible and the truth myself, especially when these popes are burning people, trying to take all the money from me for these indulgences, blah, 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 blah. What I'm trying to say is the print world created the individual Western man as we know him, who's going to go out and conquer the elements and do all these things, which is now being challenged by the electric environment. That's bringing a whole type of sensibilities from the tribal back in. Now I'll grab my other chart that might make things make more sense.
Okay.
Are we cool there for now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now this one, again, it's big. It might be hard to read, but I'll send you over a version. This is intentionally long and tedious for a reason, to show almost how deep, quote unquote, this all goes. So what I'm talking about now is like, we're sort of, okay, you can see it off the side here. I have electric era, print, literate, and tribal. So this sort of represents, on one hand, I don't want to combine too many graphs in one, but it's sort of a timeline through time Well, at the same time, it's sort of many layers, you could say, in all of us. Inside a single Western man, I put Walt Disney because we're going to say this is what his psyche, quote unquote, looks like. What we're running into is, as we're in this modern era, so many of these sensibilities, the pagan sensibilities right here, are coming all the way through. They're coming right back through, all the way back up to the top.
Yes.
Because see this big block between West and East?
Yeah.
It's because, I mean, again, it's not a single reason. There's so many causes for all this, but like one thing that happened was when the West split and the sacraments, the mysteries, the church did not carry over into the West, it ran the risk of pagan sensibilities getting right back into it. And that's what's been going on for 1,000 years, slowly. Well, I should be clear, probably more on the Protestant time, again, with the printing, Enlightenment era, Renaissance, all this stuff that like all these cats talk about online with like the world changing right around the Renaissance, you know, the Illuminati coming, all that. Like I totally agree, but my angle is technology and how many of these different technologies usher us into these different eras.
So this is a chart of the psyche of one man,
Yeah.
right? Walt Disney?
Yeah, it's a bit collective, but by the time it helps what I'm saying, explain. If you just read it to yourself.
Can you explain from the bottom to the top what's going on?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's walk through this. And again, forgive me if it's not perfect on camera. I may have to, yeah. Okay, so we're just gonna go through this. We have creation, the Trinity that makes us in the image and the icon of God.
Okay.
Our life task is to be like the icon inside of us. Right? That's our vocation. This is what Adam was. So Adam, we have our created, God made stuff, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Creation. And from creation, from the dirt, he made Adam, us, mankind. Then we hit the fall. Man fell. We're now in this fallen state. And now if someone wants to do the history, this would be the thousands of years of the first patriarchs and, you know, Cain and Abel, Noah, all that kind of stuff. This is what I generally am just calling pagan plus Israel, because I don't want to, it's too complex. If we were to break this down, we'd have so many layers, you know? So we have this time period where we're either pagan or Israel in our consciousness, you could say. Those that have been kept the covenant of God and stay true through the fall, and those that turn to idolatry. What I'm almost saying, just to not bury the lead, is that paganism of the first century is back in action in our time.
I 100% agree with that.
Okay, great. So then at this point, we have the second Adam, Christ, our God, the second person of the Trinity incarnates. This is a game changer. Like I have a whole other chart, I didn't make it for tonight, that talks about time and why the incarnation is so important. I mean, it's obvious, but it's like there's so many reasons why it's important, because after the incarnation, being a pagan doesn't really fly in the same way. It's like there's just all these things that change once the incarnation happens. So without going into demons and all that kind of stuff of possession, let's just say we follow the West. We're now going to follow the West through time. And what this also is like, I mean, I'll just be frank. In my world prior to becoming a Christian, I was so set on finding the image of God buried in me, trying to be like God, trying to find some way to connect back to the source of all life. That's why there's this big, long, open channel. Because man, at all times, even though we have all these layers in us, we're always able to tap into the icon. I have another chart that's more the psychology of the nous and the ego, and that would be interesting too. But for the sake right now, I'm trying to say is, again, not literally, folks, but like metaphorically, we have all these stratum inside of us that when we have to dig through all of this crap to get to the heart of what it means to live in the image of God. And so if you just think about our history, we have the church, the foundation of the church, and then we have, again, I'm just cutting through the time, Dark Ages, medieval, Renaissance, Enlightenment, Endarkenment. We could also call it the beginning of scientism. Then we have, this is a little weird one. It's hard to visualize this, but here I have what's called nation and culture. This would, of course, kind of be overlaid over these areas, because what this sort of says is that not only do we have all these layers of time in us, We have all these different variants. So Walt Disney's family comes from Europe to America, to Kansas City. He's in California, and you have all these different parts of himself that go into his mind. Same for us, right? You have certain heritage, I have background, we all come from certain places. And then you have Walt himself, the ego, the person. Then after that, you have Uncle Walt, the false persona we were saying before, is like his sort of vision. This doesn't need to be there. That's why there's dots. The persona is almost this mask we have to wear to the world. And what saints are is where their face, their persona, is so much like the likeness of God. They don't have one of these fake personalities. That's why even saints themselves look so much like Christ, is because even their countenance, even their face is so much like the icon.
I've noticed that, and I wondered if that was done on purpose, that most icons are very similar in their facial structure. And
that is,
yeah.
I mean, again, hey, let's talk to a priest about it for sure, but like, or a theologian, read our books, you know. But I think that's the idea, is that we're trying to be like Christ. And like my namesake, St. Paul says, you know, it's not I who lives, but Christ in me. And that's the idea, is that I is all of this crap, everything. And this is stuff that we even run risk of when we hate the hierarchy, we hate the tyrants, you know, we're sort of still stuck in this revolutionary state of mind on some level. And so it's really hard to be a Christian, because you have to like cancel out all of this garbage in you to like get to the icon. And so getting back to Disney,
it's kind of like they say polishing a mirror. Isn't that one?
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
like you see it darkly and then you put the polish on and you can see the likeness a lot better.
Right. And again, like Paul says, like, you know, we see it darkly until we see it face to face. But I think what that means is in the eschaton, when we're not in the eschaton, but in heaven, or in the resurrection, however you want to slice it, that's when we'll be seeing Christ face to face. But ever till then, we're always going to be in these many layers. And this diagram represents sort of more of the cultural layers, where I guess, I mean, if you're okay with us doing this, I have another one I could show you that may be relevant to at least the psychology, and then we can go back to talking about what we're doing, so we at least have some terms here that we can be cool with. Okay, so this is another one, west east. This one is terms on the west that are their corollary in the east. And this is just my work. I you know, I don't know, I'm happy to criticism, whatever people have suggestions. But this comes from Jungian psychology, and this is me trying to translate it into Orthodox speak. So I'm bringing this up because when we're talking about, I don't want to be too irrelevant, getting back to this documentary, talking about the Western Christian having all this pagan stuff in him. This is why we brought this chart up, as I was trying to say, again, maybe not literally, but metaphorically, we have all this stuff in our Western psyche that blocks us. And then when we convert, let's say, or have some experience of Christ, it's like we're brought all the way back down to the church again. We're like, cut out all this crap, and we're right back down to being in the church and closer to the icon, closer to our, well, I'm trying to go back to Adam, but you know, we're closer to the source.
Right.
Okay, so now this is the same sort of idea. You could say a bottom up or whichever way, but this is in the Jungian world. Let's see, how do we want to do this? We have our ego. This is our main point of consciousness. Below that would be the shadow. These are all the things we talked about last time that are like, we're unaware of ourselves. Yeah, and the shadow is sort of our gateway into the personal unconscious. That's why I put it in brackets, because it's not necessarily a splinter figure, if you want to say it that way, but it's sort of a gate we move through. And so the shadow, once we work through our shadow, again, theoretically, saints are people who have no shadow. Their ego is way closer to just being a person. I would even say that this is a footnote tangent, but I would say the ego itself is a creation that came around the time of the printing press. Whole other conversation, but the person has always been around. The autonomous person, but this ego is sort of an extra layer we don't really need.
Right.
because we want to be a person.
Okay.
Ego, yeah, only means I, but there's, I guess, forgive me. Go ahead.
Super ego?
Yeah, the super ego in Freudian terms, if you were to change that to Jungian terms, would be the part of the personality that's in the shadow that is tied to this larger God image or a larger superstructure personality. And so the super ego, yeah, it's sort of an offshoot. But anyway,
so in the West, you got persona, and then in the East, you have the likeness.
Yeah, we have the likeness.
Okay.
I'm calling it likeness because, again, this goes back. So in the West, we say, maybe just to finish up and then we'll go bottom up. The animus is what you could call your soulmate, your contrasexual image in you that you want. When you see Jay, when I see a woman, when we see the church, whatever, it's the way that brings us into the collective unconscious. Through usually love is how we enter into our soul, into the invisible world, into the deeper parts of ourselves that we otherwise wouldn't know unless we experienced it in the presence of our lover. So then at that point, Jung would say, and the psychologist would say, that through your loved one, through your beloved, you enter into the place of God, right? I mean, that's why marriage is like, you either do marriage or monasticism, because it's like through the marriage, you enter into union more with God. But since we don't call it the self and that kind of stuff, we have different terms for it. And then last on the bottom of the list, I have a dotted line that says Big Bang evolutionary theory, quote, matter stuff, because this is just kind of the part where the scientist says, I don't know. It's just, at the end of the day, it's Kant. We can't say, it's just Kant. We can't ever talk about the thing itself. We could only talk about how it comes to us. It's like, we won't take the risk of saying there exists God. So we'll just say big question mark. Because like on some level, all of this psychology is unfounded on nothing. It's totally founded on just concepts and ideas.
Right.
Now in our world, I would say that we don't have Big Bang random stuff. We have God. We have the Trinity, who created creation. He created us in his icon, in his image, to achieve his likeness. This is the whole goal again. We want to get to likeness as quickly as possible. I don't say quickly. It's not about a race, but as directly and optimally as possible. So again, in this sense, instead of calling it me, myself, my greater personality, we call it the icon of God in us. And this is what we are trying to always be aiming for. This is what we're trying to let out into us, the icon to shine through, so that our face is less and less like a Photoshop layer. It's not 100%, but turned down in opacity so that God can shine through, the light of God can come through. How do you do this? Through prayer. Simply put, in the same way the collective unconscious gets you to come closer into these things, prayer gets you closer to the inner being. How do you get into prayer? Through your nous, the organ in which you perceive God. How do you get into your nous? Through clearing out sin. See, in a weird way, in the same way of knowing your shadow.
And explain what a nous is, just for someone who never heard that.
Oh yeah, okay. So the nous is the organ in which we directly perceive God. It's the organ, and it's just like our five senses, but it's not a physical sense. It is the organ. It's the best word for it that I use. It's the organ in which we perceive God. Simply put. And let's say we're not all sitting there having mystical visions. It could be the way that we experience nature. Or a good strawberry, or the laugh of a child, like anything that brings us in contact with the creation of God comes through the nous.
Okay.
Oh, of course, yeah, somebody can hash that out all day. But so when we clear out sin or become aware of our sin, we can then get into the nous. So let's say we're constantly sinning. Let's say we're, to cut ahead, we're like the guy in the Disneyland movie. Go ahead.
And the nous is something that can be cleaned, right? It's
exactly. That's why we have sin right above it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't clean your sin, you don't get rid of all your passions and all that stuff, which happy Lent, everybody, by the way. Whew, but if we don't get through our sins, we're never gonna be able to clean our nous. We're never gonna be able to clean that mirror.
Yeah.
So the only way to get through our sin is to get through the old man in us, to get through the old Adam,
Okay.
right? Because as we've been baptized into Christ, we have a new personality. We shouldn't. This is what's so difficult about being a Christian, is like we really, on paper, we're kind of just like God, icon, likeness. Like all this stuff, once you've been baptized, it doesn't exist anymore. You become a new creation in Christ.
So doing your shadow work or whatever is in the Western idea is getting rid of the old man in Orthodox.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say it's a way to be aware of our sin
Mm-hmm.
and start looking at ways that we're unconscious about stuff. Like, you know, it's not like every sin is running over your neighbor with the car or something extreme like that. It could just be forgetting to call your mom 7 weeks in a row or something like that, you know? All this baggage we carry with us that we can't take with us. So that's the old man. And he's the old man because he should be Christ, right? Our person, our ego, our persona, our likeness, it should be like Christ. That's why this old man is the first layer that comes between us and true access into the depths. Because we always have Adam we're dragging along with us. And the reason I honestly made these charts tonight is because, yeah, it helps to clarify thoughts, but I really wanted to make it relevant for when we talk about Escape from Tomorrow, because what I found in a lot of the criticisms of that film, which taking a more, do you want to jump into that? Oh, you know what? Sorry, audience. We do have to talk about the anti-family stuff in that Catholic documentary.
Okay.
But I don't want to, maybe we should go back to that. I feel like we got a thing going here at the moment. But
yeah, let's finish the documentary.
Okay.
We were at Orwellian conformity versus diversity. And that's what I think they're trying to homogenize everything.
Yeah.
And they're way more tyrannical than what they're supposedly fighting against.
Well, the hard part about that symbol, I'm sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say they're having no more gender greetings at the parks. So instead of, hey, boys and girls, now it's going to be, hey, whatever.
Hey, people. Hey.
Yeah, hey, you. And then, yeah, we mentioned the internal videos of top Disney execs, and they're not at all secret GAY agenda. Her name was Latoya Raveno, and she was the producer of Puppy Pals, Super Monsters, and Rise Up and Sing Out. And she says she was adding queerness wherever she could.
When you were talking about the symbol, everything being under the tyranny of the symbol, that's to me why I get what's alarming about the Disney one is like it's so caked in happiness, acceptance, you know. Even like, dude, even when I went to Disneyland, they even have these like Wakanda Forever, Black Panther scrubs, so that when you're on the front line poking people, helping everybody out, not just poking people, but, you know, being a nurse, being a doctor, you could represent the fake world of Wakanda while doing it, you know. And but just sort of the innocuousness of all this sort of like, it's all in the name of happiness and, like you said, diversity, but not.
They had a scene about woke Disney shows transgender man offering little girls advice of which tampons to buy.
Yeah, that was crazy. I'd never seen that. And I was like, what? I noticed it before they mentioned that he was like, who that person was. I just watched it. I was like, I think that's a dude right there telling that guy to do tampons. And I was like, that's kind of a weird choice.
Yeah. First of all, nobody should be using tampons. If you're doing that, girls, stop it. Anyway.
Well, it's funny thing to your point, because I'm such a blatant try to be optimistic, but there is this weird part where you're right about a lot of stuff where like animation is a lot of work. So for them to make all these choices to say, you know what, we're going to put that on the storyboard, we're going to run that to the meetings, we're going to have somebody record the audio, we're going to have somebody render it in computer, somebody render the lighting, somebody bring it into post, all these things to make a joke or whatever you want to say, some comment about something.
Mhm.
And it's like, if I may now, I'm going to be one of those Disney apologists for a second, put my hat on. It's like stuff that I think is so, it's just so interesting. Disney is such a fascinating entity because you always wonder, what would Walt say? And
Mm.
that's always the question. What would Walt say about this? What would Walt say about this? You know? And I guess like, at the end of the day, I don't really care. But since we're in this arena and we're talking about it, yeah, it just makes you wonder, what would Walt Disney say about everything that's become of his legacy at this
Yeah.
point?
Well, there seems to be some internal struggles, because like you said, they can't be all bad. But the leadership definitely, like Disney president of entertainment, Carrie Burke, she is the mother of two queer children, she says, one transgender and the other pansexual. And she thinks they don't have enough gay leads. She announced 50% of all Disney characters will be LGBTQIA in the future.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm almost curious to see these movies get made because I really wonder from like you could say quote unquote a psychological angle, like all this stuff I'm talking about of like the man and woman creating the wholeness and the shadow and all these like parts that are so, to use a lack of a better way, anatomically configured.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
they fit together in a way. We're creating these movies now where like things are gonna, this is the weird part, is they'll still fit, but in a weird inverted way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, so one little tangent I want to go off real fast, and all you have to do is act interested. Um, there is a cartoon that plays on Disney Plus called Little Demon. Have you heard of this?
Heard of this? Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never seen it. Oh no, it's in that video. Is in that documentary, right?
They
They show
mentioned
it.
it in the documentary. I
Yeah.
had to go watch an episode because it was so crazy. So it's centered around this little girl, Chrissy, who is a teen, and she's the Antichrist. A
You know
cartoon
what's funny?
about, huh?
Yeah, go on. Her name's Chrissy, though. I was
Yeah,
Christ
Christ.
too.
Yeah. So she's the Antichrist. Her mother is a Wiccan, and her father is Satan. Now,
Is this a Disney original?
this is a FX,
Oh,
but
okay.
it plays on
But
Disney
still,
Plus.
yeah,
So if you
yeah.
get Disney Plus for your kids and you're not watching exactly everything they're doing all the time, they're gonna come across a little demon. Um, and yeah, so I watched the first episode. Opening sequence, a pregnant witch is going to unalive her baby as soon as it's born, but when it comes out, it's a girl, and she decides not to.
Hmm.
The mom tries to, well, okay, so then fast forward, the little girl grows up, and the mom's taking her to school, and mom tries to feel if her rosebuds are tender in the car before school.
Okay. Okay. Do you think that's exactly like? Do you think that's exactly what it's implying?
Well, she's trying to ask her daughter if she's becoming a woman yet about her menstrual cycle.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Mind-boggling.
yeah. So then she goes to school, she feels invisible. She's that trope, the invisible girl at school. She
What
gets,
does she care? She's the Antichrist.
yeah, not yet. Like she hasn't come into her powers yet because she hasn't menstruated
Oh.
yet. But she gets
Oh.
that at school, and the boys come in and they see what happened, and they nickname her Bloody Mary, and she has a psychotic break slash possession and turns into this like Carrie or Hulk or something.
I was
She's
just
filled
thinking
with
that.
Satan, and she kills her bullies, right?
Wow.
And then her period has summoned her father, Satan, and the mom is using magic to keep her away from the dad, right?
Wow.
The Satan character, Lucifer, is played by Danny DeVito,
Really?
and he is different incarnations. So he says he lives in the metaphysical realm, and they show that he's not like incarnate, but he's going to be. And she can visit her dad in the metaphysical realm, and which he calls the port authority of the universe where he lives, and not hell.
Huh. It's called Port Authority of the
Well,
Universe.
he says this is like the Port Authority of the
Right,
universe.
right.
Like the
It's
crossroads, basically. Right. So he
Mm.
lives at the crossroads, and he can only incarnate in physical form for certain amounts of time. The mom gets naked and does a ritual to go to the realm to save her daughter. When she takes all her clothes off, she's very muscular, she's very tattooed, she's very
How much of this do they show of like
all
her
of it.
nudity? Like obviously, like they're not
Yeah.
showing, but they're gonna
All.
show her cleavage and all
No.
that stuff.
Full.
Really? Like nude?
Yes.
It's on Disney?
Yeah. Disney Plus. So
I know you said FX, but wow, that is mind-boggling.
she's very much like a Baphomet character, male and female. The mom is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the goal is Satan wants to merge the realms, the
Yeah.
metaphysical and the material world. And yeah, the first episode is just their meeting and all this, but I can't believe all the stuff that was in Little
Man, that's that's so interesting. Like, you know, and I'm not a good exegete, so I'm sure someone else out there could hit more of these details, but I definitely know looking at the broad edge, the crust of the pizza, so to speak, that like there's a lot of again anti meaning in the place of Christian stuff in there, like the idea of the blood, the child who offers the blood that will please the father.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, we don't really believe in the same sort of like, oh, God shed all his blood for us, like in that, you know, way that's the obvious, simple way of talking about the crucifixion. But obviously, in the whole idea of shedding our blood, Christ shedding his blood for us, the Eucharist, becoming one with the Father, all that kind of stuff. I don't care to theologize on at the moment. It's just so fascinating seeing that play out in this inverted way of the girl and offering her own biology. See, oh man, this will probably bring us back to that Catholic documentary if you want, but like the anti-family, anti-biology,
Mhm.
anti-carbon physical body, that's the new thing, man. There's a like
Yeah.
you said the word earlier, there's this intense, I don't remember the exact word, but the idea you're saying is there's this intense antagonism against physical life.
Mhm.
And in the same way, in the small little, and again, I'm just riffing right now, but like in the small little way of this movie, I'm even hearing with the demon girl, she has to offer her own blood to please her Satan father. You know, it's
Mhm.
such a crazy inversion of the what God did by shedding his blood in the new covenant. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Anything that we have, they have to invert it and mock it and turn it. I mean, that's
and
the whole Gnostic Catholic masses is just making the liturgy disgusting.
right. And then when you said it, you just said agnostic. That's the next door I wanted to open. I felt opened up is like the merging. I never really understood this till I became a Christian. Well, I intuited it, but it wasn't until I had the language of the church to help me understand this more. But like the the spirit, body, material, spiritual thing, it's such a false dichotomy. Like it's not like the more spiritual you become, the less physical body you have.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But like in the way that our culture perceives spirituality, it's like, oh, I have to stop eating pork. I have to stop doing all these physical things that I used to like in order to become more spiritual. You
Mhm.
know, and it's like, I mean, somebody could point at the camera at us and say, what do you guys do with fasting and all that kind of stuff? But we don't need to defend orthodoxy here. It's a whole other conversation. But just saying, you know, the idea of this split between the physical and the spiritual. We're going to see a lot of that coming on too with these two realms and merging them and all that kind of stuff. Like that's going to be a definite big leitmotif.
Yeah. Carbon-based life is going to be out and silicone-based life is going to be in style.
You in my notes? You're looking at my notes right here, carbon versus silicon.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
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 Last thing I wanted to say about Disney, that one documentary is, I mean, of course, the top shareholders are Vanguard and BlackRock, right? Who
Yeah.
own everything else, and something called State Street, and they
What
are
are some other,
Hmm?
what are some other companies they own? I've seen the
Vanguard and
charts.
BlackRock. Oh, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
everything. Like you have to look into these two, and they own each other, so it's like this big amorphous. They own all the media and like the railway that just derailed. They're buying up all the real estate. So yeah, look into BlackRock and Vanguard. Those are two gigantic megalithic corporations that are on the
And
forefront of
so,
this ESG movement.
so
This
is
social
Disney
credit score. Hmm?
is Disney owned by higher companies then? Or
I
are they
guess
like
they're shareholders of
shareholders?
it. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah. Um, Disney begins to partner with the CCP.
That's
And
China, right?
yes, and
Okay,
then
that was very interesting too.
that was crazy. And so if they're supposed to be all wokester and anti-racist, but they diminish their black characters for the things that go out to Chinese consumers.
Say more for the people that didn't watch the movie. Do you
Um,
remember the part you're talking about, that poster
yeah,
that you're
so
talking
like if there's a prominent black person on a movie poster, if they're releasing it in China, they will take him off or make him smaller or just take him off completely or whatever. So it's very racist. It
Yeah,
just
it's
shows
like
that they don't really believe what they're saying. You know,
took the
they're just
words right out of my
pandering.
mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't think maybe people here need to hear it, but it's like Disney is not your friend, people. Like it's really not.
No.
And just like you said, this is a great example of like, I guess what gets me is it's like, yeah, I could talk about this stuff all day, but what I really would love to do is we should interview a Disney adult. Like that's how we would really
Mm.
know what's going on, is like finding out what these people think.
Well,
Because
it's probably something like my first memory was going to a Disney movie, and so like everything that's tied to a happy thought is also connected to a Disney.
well, right. And it's hey, let's let's pull the chart out. It's all looking back to paradise.
Oh,
It's all
right.
this desire to get back to paradise. And this is how hard it is once we get kicked out of the gates and we don't have Christ.
Mm-hmm.
We have to go through all this crap. I mean, look, we're not superheroes because we have Christ, of course, but like saying when we don't have all the tools in the toolkit, we're so screwed. You know? It's
Mm-hmm.
like the Disney adult searching for paradise again. It's like the entirely wrong direction, even. Theosis is to live in time and space now, in the present, not to constantly want to go backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like on some level, I don't think I could go there right now. It'd be riffing too much. But
Well, let's start
uh
talking about Escape from Tomorrow.
well, can we maybe say a little bit on the anti-family thing? Because that was one thing I made. That was like my
Yeah,
huge my
because
huge note on the film
Jay
was,
has a article about Escape from Tomorrow, and
oh cool.
you can go read that on Jay's analysis, but he called it an occult themed mind control operation targeting the nuclear family. That's what Disney World is.
Hmm. Okay, then we could tie this all in. Oh, I guess that's the one thing I was going to say on the CCP in China and Disney. And again, it comes back to like the what would Walt do?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I would doubt he would be very sympathetic towards all these things. And what's so fascinating about Walt Disney is that in the time when Walt Disney was around and still doing this corporation thing, it wasn't, and some of you could probably get more cite this better than me. We weren't out of the country yet making all these things. Like, yes, I think the watches were brought in from some different country, but most of the product was still being made in America.
Uh-huh.
So even if one wanted to like be anti-capitalistic or whatever, it's like you could still be pro-America in the early days of Disney before it became anti-family, before it moved to Silicon, when it was still in the carbon world, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So it just, yeah, just saying like the whole China thing is really fascinating with the Disney because it kind of shows the way they just play whatever card they can to appease, it's the idolatry. It's just giving pinches of incense to whatever idol is necessary to make the money go around. Like my friend was kind of like, he wasn't dogging us, but he's like, all this conspiracy stuff on some level, isn't it just money? I was kind of like, well, it is. Like, there's layers of it, and like money really is one of those ones that I don't think about all too often, to be honest with you, because I'm so much more interested in that deeper stuff. But like, yeah, the money talks. And so, like, if you watch that Imagineering documentary, the last episode, they go to China, and there was this big, what took me from it was like, wow. My note here says Disney could get into China because of the power of its symbol, the Mickey Mouse. or
Mhm.
even the American flag or the cross can't get in that
Mhm.
same way.
Mhm.
And when I watched this documentary, I think he was like the president of China or whoever. They were like some very important person. He Bob Iger was saying that when they were talking, he like basically the leader of China like was shedding a tear, and he was like he's so happy that Disney was coming. He grew up with Winnie the Pooh. He grew up with Winnie the Pooh his whole life and all this stuff. And he said, and then what I found so quote unquote sinister by Disney was how they said Disney oversees whatever we're doing with Disney here forward. They're basically saying China, but it's the agenda is to make it authentically Disney, distinctly Chinese, or vice versa. Distinctly Disney, authentically Chinese. So
Mhm.
we're just going to syncretize all this stuff to make it work, you know? And yeah, it's working. It's working.
Well, to answer your question, what will Walt say? Wasn't he involved in a lot of anti-communist things in Hollywood, like hunting down
Right. Like to the point.
actors? And I mean, I know Lucille Ball got in trouble for
Really?
that. Yeah, like there was a big thing about her.
Well, to the
Others,
point. I'm sorry, go on.
I was just saying there in that time in like the 30s and 40s, they were weeding out communists specifically in Hollywood, and Walt Disney was on the forefront of that.
Yeah, and Walt Disney, even this is like I don't have a chart for this one, but let's talk super ego or something like that for a second, or the persona, or however you want to slice it. Shadow. This would be a better way where Walt Disney projected his shadow, almost his communist tyrant side, onto all of his workers.
Mm-hmm.
Said,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, you guys, you who used to be the source of my creativity, everything in Disney is exteriorized. So let's say an artist, let's say in like a Snow White film or like a lot of myths, you have the little chthonic creatures of the earth, the animals, the dwarves, the little minions who help build the house, help get things going. It's always the little creatures or the little earth creatures, the earth beings who will help the character build.
Elementals.
Yeah, they'll help them build their creation.
Yeah.
In Disney, his little elves, the people, the animals are real human workers
Right.
that are doing that job. And when Disney runs out of creativity, and his little minions aren't providing the juice, they go on strike. He rebels against. He's antagonistic towards them,
Mm-hmm.
and then well, next comes Disneyland. But it's like at that point, yeah, he hits a big lull because his source of creativity, the workers, he's now called communists and is completely turned against him.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much. It's so deep. Like you could just keep on talking about Disney.
Disney is just have a thesis point. Like Disney, I believe, is a great vector, a great interface to talk about all the 20th century.
Yes.
And maybe where we're getting tonight too, because I really believe there's a strong break between we'll call it analog Disney and digital Disney.
Yeah.
Or let's just, yeah. And I think if I were to be charitable, that a lot of the sensibilities inside analog Disney are closer to, I mean, they're still Gnostic, there's still all these things, but it is still closer to home than this new breakaway civilization Disney that's going on,
Mm-hmm.
before our very eyes.
Disney, did you know he was close friends with Werner von Braun, the Nazi rocketeer?
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
so here's the chapter, last chapter that I wrote.
That's awesome.
Because in gematria, the word fox equals 666. So instead of
Really?
20th century fox, you get 20th century 666. And then here's a picture I took at Disney. Can you see that?
Yeah, the art of Disney.
But can you see that
Oh,
mouse?
six, that's 3 6s.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Is that crazy?
Wow.
That's
That's the
it.
thing. I'm always wondering, like, was this on purpose? Or are they just like,
I think so. Yeah.
see,
So
here's what I'll go. Even if it's not on purpose, I would say it's there. It's
yeah.
there.
Right.
It's still there, right?
So let's talk about this Escape from Tomorrow, the occult themed mind control operation targeting the nuclear family. That's what these theme parks and the whole corporation has become.
Take us through it.
opening scene is just like happy memories, like Thunder Mountain and kids laughing and enjoying the parks, right? And it's about this nuclear family, a mom and dad, a boy and a girl, that are on vacation at Disney World. And they wake up in their hotel, and the dad's lost his job on the phone, but he still has to pretend. He has to put his mask on,
That
right?
was Persona. He's
Yeah.
ready to go.
And finish out this vacation, this, magical time that the kids are supposed to be having. So he can't even be himself that just lost his job. There's something weird going on with the kids in that they're acting strange and creepy, right? Like the kid locks the dad out on the patio and goes back to bed with the mom and takes the place beside the mom where the dad is
I didn't
sleeping.
even think about that.
Yeah.
I didn't.
So dad's on the
So many other
patio,
notes
kid
about
locks the
that.
door and goes in bed and lays with the mom. And the dad's like, let me in, but nobody hears them and they continue sleeping. So they're
And
being,
then he has to use his technology, his phone, to
yeah,
actually communicate to his wife. He
yes.
can't do it
So he
directly.
has to call her from
Through the
outside.
glass, right? He's on the
Yeah.
other side of the glass, on the looking glass. So I'm having fun now. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So they're being more naughty than usual. And this is like supposed to be the spirit of rebellion that Disneyland implants into kids. I mean, I've seen it over and over. All of these
Hmm.
Disney Channel kids have the biggest attitude, like from nowhere. And you're like, where did you learn to be sassy like this? And then you turn on Disney Channel and that's how they all act. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, well, if I've not noticed it in that respect, I've noticed it. Well, you said it there just got me thinking. Even if it's not that, it's still there in when you go to Disneyland. You're a 5-year-old kid or whatever, and he like in that movie, he's like, I want to go on Buzz Lightyear. I want to do Buzz Lightyear. I want to do Buzz Lightyear. Buzz Lightyear, Buzz Lightyear, Buzz Lightyear, Buzz Lightyear. It's like, this point where it's like, I'm gonna revolt unless I go on Buzz Lightyear.
Mhm.
So I guess what I'm saying is even in the idea of the kid in the amusement park, free to well, again, they have their parents there, but free to go and do whatever they want, make the choice, be the decision maker.
Mm.
It's kind of like an environment to allow the children to
Oh, good point. So in the inverted Disney world, the kids call the shots and the parents just follow along.
right. And then were you telling me this? Did I hear this from someone? Was it in the documentary? But somebody's even saying the mom is like, Disneyland is for us too. You got to be a good boy because Disneyland is mom's special place as well.
Oh, yeah. I think that was in there. So the interesting thing about this movie was, as far as I know, they had no permission to film inside there, so they just kind of had to like have it
Yeah, if
around.
if we could pause for a quick moment before we go into the movie, I thoroughly enjoyed this film.
Yeah.
And actually, it's on YouTube, so you can actually watch it directly on YouTube. But I thought, man, I don't like maybe I don't watch a lot of low budget films or whatever, but I was like, man, this is thoroughly entertaining. It was like a David Lynch college piece or
Mhm.
something.
It was. It
Um,
was.
so I have a question for you. Do you think the filmmaker was just to say it very simply, do you think he was doing this stuff to like raise the flat, raise awareness, all this kind of stuff, or do you think are you guys implying that he's bought in by the machine and he's making this? Because he
No,
seemed pretty independent when I was reading some interviews with him and stuff.
I think that they knew a lot, like especially for 2013 when this came out. I mean, they had to have been watching my channel or Freeman's channel or Jay or something. Like there's just too many juicy coincidences in there about things that we talk about.
Well, and the one that I thought was really prescient was like the virus that was going on in the park.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get to that. Okay,
I was
so
like, what? Yeah, go ahead and break it. I
yeah,
get
because
you.
they get into the park for the day and everybody's coughing like COVID, there's
Yeah.
some kind of pandemic going on. Um, and then they're riding the little metro thing to the park, and the dad notices that there are some like sexy teens on the train,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they're not teen. I mean, they're young. They're like 12 to
Yeah, this was the part
15.
I wanted to talk about this at some point. Because that was a really what I saw a lot of pushback from that, of people being made. I'm sure you've seen this one like Disney vlogger chick. She's like a really popular, like kind of like pretty young girl who just like talks about Disney all the time. And like she's one of those YouTubers where it's like she edits every 3 seconds. She like, can't even finish a thought without the edit. But she did one on Escape from Tomorrow. And I kind of scrubbed through it. And and a lot of the comments on there and just comments in general was like, God, this guy's so pervy, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I don't think you guys get it. Like that to me was a very obvious, oh, let's just shoot the messenger.
This is a
Let's just
commentary on, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you. So go on, let's break down more of the film because I thought that was really crucial.
Well,
The young
this
kid.
is a central part of it is the sexuality part because the dad and the son are checking out the teens together,
Yeah.
right?
And
And
then he
they're
throws
so
dad
young.
under the bus later.
What?
Oh, he just throws dad under the bus later at some
Oh
point
yeah.
though. Yeah.
Um, but they're so young, like one of them still has braces and they're being very overtly affectionate with each other. And this is turning the dad on. And so he tries to ignore it and they go on this ride. And the little girl makes this comment like the witches are scary, right? And they're like, witches aren't real. But then in the movie, we figure out witches are real.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Like again, when I was like, oh, I'm so glad they brought a witch into this because and I think I made notes think I almost think maybe for our next talk we talk about off camera or whatever, but we should move in at some point talk about the feminine and witches, the mother, because I even have a note here when a person takes the place of the father,
Mm-hmm.
we could say to be more broad when there's no God, the
Mm-hmm.
father, when there's no, let's say even a spiritual father, a priest, all that kind of stuff, to help us, the son, the person takes the place of the father and makes himself a partner with the mother, unconsciously identifies as the father, and therefore becomes a bedfellow with the mother, just like in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is you can't create life from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's anti-life. It's another thing that's anti-biology.
Right.
Anti-incarnation is the for lack of a better word, MILF world cougar thing that's like just in full bore over the last like 20 years in our culture. So anyways, just saying the whole idea of like the sterile sleeping with mom, witches, there's so much we can unpack with that.
Yeah.
So go on, let's go through the movie more.
So throughout the movie, we are meant to understand that this place brings out the worst in the people. So it exaggerates, the rebellion in the kids. It exaggerates the perviness in the dad. It exaggerates the bad attitude of the mom because the dad gets turned on by the little girls, and then he tries to make a move on the mom, on Winnie the Pooh, and she's not having it because it's not about her. She's just being used at that point. But her bitch mom attitude is super overblown because it's making the point that this is what this does to families.
Do you think that was a fair portrayal of bitch mom?
Yeah.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
I was just kind of
She's
wondering.
obviously not, pleasant to be around, but she's also under the burden of like, her husband's lusting after these little girls and she's got these kids to take care of. He doesn't find her attractive anymore. So it's like, yeah, that would make anybody feel a little bitchy.
Yeah, totally.
Because I mean, they even have a conversation like, well, mommy's beautiful. And the daddy's like, well, yeah, in a booky sort of way, like not sexy.
Yeah, it's like, again, it's just a film. So I'm not, I enjoyed the way, enjoy might be the wrong word, but I enjoyed the way they portrayed that the dad, like, why can this dad even say his wife's the most beautiful woman who ever existed?
Yeah.
Like, why does he even have to have that lapse in thought, especially to his child who, like a sponge, will absorb everything. Like, oh, my dad had a big long pause before he answered the question about how beautiful my mom is. I wonder what he really thinks, It's like, I thought that was good. I thought that was a nice touch.
So Daddy's getting uncomfortable on these rides, and specifically they go on Small World, which is sponsored by UNESCO.
That ties into the digital discarnate. I mean, I'll get there. I'm kind of just probing, but like, yes, it's a Small World is really the like anthem of the new world
I
You
know.
know?
It's a reduced population world, right?
See, I'd even say yes, it's like there's so many there's so many things that are yes about all this. And I would say it's also the miniaturization of the world through the phone. It
Oh
is a
yeah.
small world after all,
Mhm.
and it's in my pocket.
It's a small world because you live in a one room and you never go anywhere because you work, sleep, eat, not in your pod.
That's true.
So he has some kind of like psychotic break in this ride, and it's showing you that he can now kind of see demons behind things.
That was interesting. The way when you phrase it like that, it was as if the small world was the initiation into the invisible world that
Mhm.
then allowed him to perceive the demonic clearly throughout the rest of the film.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's good.
So mom and dad split up, and one takes one kid and the other takes the other. And the dad and the son just use all day to follow these young girls around, creeping on them together. Right. So a
Yeah,
significant portion of this whole day is just like
spent
spent
in lust.
being a creep. And he even goes so far as he makes the boy go on a ride that the little boy can't handle just to be close to the girls. Right. And the girls are noticing that the dad is following them. Like they're not stupid. Like they're playing it up and like sirens or nymphs or something,
Right.
like Tinkerbell.
Totally. And I'm just riffing here off what you're saying, but when the kid can't handle it and throws up, again, it's kind of this idea that I don't want to call the kid, just say he's a one-to-one symbol of the dad's soul.
Mhm.
You could say he represents some sort of inner undeveloped, on its way, its potential
Or
inside of
his
him.
conscience or something.
It's totally, yeah, or his conscience, something like that. That when the person is obsessing over these passions, the women, all that stuff, again, his physical constitution can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Throws up. It's like there's a sense that it can't be processed, it can't be digested
Right.
properly. There's no time for process in the digital, the light speed environment.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, dad is distracted to the point where it's now harming the kids because he makes the boy go on a ride that makes him puke. And then when the mom and dad switch kids and the dad takes the little girl this time, he's still trying to creep on the teen girls. And his little girl, he's not watching her, and she falls down and skins her knee to bleed.
Is this before he goes and sleeps with the witch?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're not even there yet, let
Right.
alone the whole fact that he
So
like leaves. Yeah.
just the fact that the dad is distracted in his lust has already caused both of his kids to have accidents
Right.
on the same day.
Wow.
So the little girl gets hurt and they go to the Disney nurse, and the nurse warns them about the cat flu. Right? That's
Yeah,
going
that was
on.
interesting. I was like, wait, what'd she say?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she said that all right.
Yeah.
Do you
So
think
mhm.
do you think in the film they're implying, because they definitely hit it full gear by the end, but do you think they're implying at all that the virus is making him go into this?
Yes, I think
I
that's part of it.
I
But
think it's
the
part of it.
Disneyland is the virus.
Yeah. Ooh, maybe. And it's funny too, like I don't want to make too much out of this, but I definitely thought, why cat? Why cat and mouse? Like
Oh
why
yeah.
not a dog flu? Why not bat flu? Why not some any other thing? Like why was it a cat?
Right.
Uh, but anyways, I don't want to make too much of that. But
Yeah. So she says, there's a cat flu going around. You can be a host without even knowing it.
mm.
So then the dad.
Hey,
Mhm,
that reminds me.
mhm.
That's making me think, at least a thread in our conversation tonight, back to the sort of splinter personality thing too. It's like on some level you could be a host, a carrier of this
Oh,
thing without even knowing it.
good point.
It
Or
is a
you,
funny thing we happen to pull tonight between what we're talking
or
about.
like you could be a host of demons and not even knowing it because
Here,
like
here.
um,
Yeah.
you know,
Hey,
I hate it when I go to church and kids are wearing Disney cartoons in their clothes. I'm just like, oh, don't you even know that's anyways.
at least it's funny though. Forgive me. The one Bible verse I do remember. It's like when the Lord says, you go and clean your house and you make it all nice and clean, and then you go away and 7 more demons come back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at least that there got me thinking about that
Yeah.
idea. You may be giving host to way more than you even expected, you know, that you were aware of.
So there's a scene where the dad is watching the little girl play and he sits on a bench and there's this like single mom next to him. And she is the witch. And she kind of hypnotizes him with a little necklace
medallion.
jewel. Yeah. So she has a little
Right at
medallion.
her breast, of course, too.
Yeah.
Notice it's like,
She puts him under a spell, and the next thing he knows, he's waking up and he's having sex with this single mom, this witchy lady, right? And he's lost time, he's lost his senses, he's lost all of it. And she says something about the princesses, the Disney princesses are high-priced courtesans.
Yeah, so I'll say something here, and then I want you to riff on this. I found that to be a very interesting thing they're doing in this film, where like not only is all this crazy stuff going on, but there's also Chinese businessmen who pay for Disney princesses.
I know.
And I was like, what is this based in anything? Or is this just, even if it's not, it kind of I can see it. It's a motif, you know?
The Efrey Jep Stein guy. There was information leaked about how they talked in code words like, I'm going to order Cinderella, or I'm going to order Belle, or next time you can have Ariel. Or so they were using princess names as code words for TRAF.
So though he was doing that years after this film, or was that beginning? When did that all begin with Pep?
Long time ago.
Yeah. Like, so you're saying there could be an overlap.
Yeah.
Or there could be an interface between these two.
Yeah. So mom is over the top B. Dad can't do anything right. He gets out of the witch situation, and then he goes to the pool and he continues to creep at the pool.
Yeah. Hardcore.
And even to the point where he's crying because he can't have what he wants. Do you remember that?
I do.
And I was like, are you crying?
Yeah. Well, see, it's funny. In that moment, I won't put aside too much of the sexual stuff, because obviously it was so momentous in that scene. But I did feel for the guy just in general. Because I could totally imagine being in this position of just like, well, you know, just being ordered one thing after another, this, and like, dude just can't get a break all day, you know. And then more, I guess I saw it as a larger comment, maybe stepping outside of the film, a larger comment on males being able to show emotion and express their affect and all this kind of stuff, where immediately he's like, no, I'm not crying, you know, no, I'm not doing anything.
Well, he is being continually rejected by her, but he's also doing nothing to make her feel like she'd want to give in to his advance anyway. So,
well, yeah, and not only is he rejecting her and doing that, he's also blatantly going and sleeping with a witch.
Right.
He's not doing himself any favors.
And then he gets drunk.
Yeah, super drunk.
And then the mom starts to see what's happening, because they take their little pool break and they go back to the park for the evening, and they run into the girls again, the teen girls. And the teen girls walk by, and the mom sees their faces as demonic.
Dude, I'm getting chills right now when you said that, because that scene was kind of eerie when they show that one girl's face change. Dude, I was like, this is scary. I was like, this is actually pretty scary. Yeah.
And true too, so, because those girls are possessed by the spirit of Jezebel, trying to get this poor man to drool over them all day.
It's funny you mentioned drooling, because remember later, then she spits all that drool all over him.
Yeah. So they know what they're doing, and the mom has got this spiritual sense when she sees their faces now as demon faces, mocking her because they're taking her husband's affection away from her, and the demons love that. And so now the mom can see the Jezebel in the girls. And there's this other character who's like a fat scooter guy. Do you remember that? Like a scooter guy.
Did the mother, pivoting a little, did the mother slap the daughter before she was able to see the demons, or after?
I think it was right after.
Right. Yeah, it was right when they split again.
Yeah.
Maybe it was
So
right before.
the mom
Either
has just
way,
realized all that's happening, and she sees the demon, and then the little girl's being a little bratty, and the mom slaps her because she's just
right.
because she calls him out on the French girls, right?
Yeah.
And she says, I know what you've been doing all day. And he gaslights her, and he's like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
That's when
Yeah.
she loses it.
I appreciated the way they portrayed that feminine wisdom to be like, look, I've been sitting here all day. I know what you're doing. I haven't said anything.
Mm-hmm.
I love you, blah, 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 blah. But this has hit this point of just
Mm-hmm.
like, who are you?
Enough is enough.
Yeah. Who are you fooling, dude?
And the son doesn't trust the dad anymore. Right. So he's lost all of his family members' affection and
The
trust.
daughter's gone at this point, too. He loses her.
Right. Well, no, the dad is taken to an underground base.
That's when he loses her, right?
Yeah.
He just gets zapped. He gets zapped in the groin. And then he goes, that part was so cool. This whole movie was crazy.
One of the French girls comes up and spits in his face because of what he's been doing all day. So now they're like turning on him too.
That's what's so fast. That's what I loved about the sort of like, all right, I guess I'm going into PSA mode. Folks, don't worship demons. This is what you get. They turn on you instantaneously.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's like, but there's this funny bit where the demons, the succubi, if we want to call them, or would they be succubi? Yeah.
Succubus.
They how do I want to say this? It's like even demons end up doing the work for the Lord. And it's like on some level, these chicks knew he's a bad man.
Yeah.
They're gonna take everything they can from him. And so not only are they gonna elope him in with all the sex and enticement, they're also then gonna actually punish him, giving him the cat flu.
Yeah, so they spit in his face. He's tased by the Disney security. He's whisked to an underground base under the spaceship Earth ride. And they talk about the Siemens Corporation conducting experiments.
Yeah, tell me about that, because I don't know what Siemens is. That's a real company, I take it? Or...
Yeah, so let me just wiki this.
Sure.
Because I know they were in Nazi Germany. I know that they had to do with the camps and the workers in the camps.
Even if that's purely for the sake of just name dropping why their guy did it, it still would have some sort of pattern to it in the sense of like, you know, everybody at Disneyland being, you know, work work will make you happy, you know, instead of work will set you free.
Right. So this is a technology conglomerate from 1847.
Wow.
Founder Werner von Siemens, headquarters in Munich and Berlin. They make generators, transformers, medical equipment, water treatment systems, fire alarms, engines, diesel gas engines, compressors, all this technological machining stuff. So if you're interested in Siemens, you can go look at that. But I know that they had to do with the camps, and they are the sponsor of the Spaceship Earth ride.
And I'm just, so they actually are the sponsor in real life. And so at Disney World, that Siemens logo never goes on the Epcot thing, right? That was just in the movie.
No, you walk right underneath it to get on the ride.
No, I know, but that big light on the Epcot dome, that was just in the movie, right? Because like on the dome, it said Siemens all over it.
Oh, no.
I think that was just like Photoshop, right? That's not really there when you go to, okay.
Well, how could they have done that? Because they might have done that in post-production. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. I think it was done in post. That's what I was curious about.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because again, it is a bad pattern riffing on my part, but I just laughed. I was like, oh, the semen. Like, of course they're taking this guy's vitality and his seed and taking under the Disney, you know.
Well, he gets down there, and his name's Jim, and we find out Jim has been the subject of a mind control experiment since he was first brought to the park as a child.
Okay, I didn't really get everything going on in that scene.
Yeah,
that makes sense, because then they show I actually thought this was a good film. Like they did a lot of cool, like they did good motifs of things where, like, remember in that scene they then show the alternate Jim, his alternate wife, and you're just kind of like, I was kind of like, what's this even mean, blah blah. But then at the end, when you see that's who it is,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, is that actually him? Is that a new person? Is that a totally random person who's just like the next Jim, so to speak? Is it his ideal life? But
I think it's his ideal life, yes. And at the end, it does become the next Jim.
right. And what I absolutely loved about this, it was such a small moment, but I was like, man, this is where these Marvel movies, the movies of the corporate world today, they're not even this good as this stupid art film. Like into
Yeah.
that part with the vans down at the bottom of the parking lot when they're bringing the people in. Remember, they wheel him out, and when it first begins and he's looking out, long before the movie begins, he's looking down that van. You don't think anything of it,
Right.
but then you're like, oh,
So
that's
it's like
another
always
Disney
happening
dad.
right under your nose.
Always happening right under your nose. What? Oh, shoot! Great
Yeah.
one, Jamie. That's great. Yeah.
So when he's in the mind control chamber, the images give the impression that his mind control programming is done through sex. Do you remember that? Because there's these giant
Oh yeah.
wall-to-wall butts and boobs and stuff. And
Wait, wasn't that when he was on Soren, or was that also in?
well, that's another like fantasy that he had
Right,
when he
and
was
that's the
taken
wife he's with at the end.
yeah, so he's taken underground. You're given the impression that the mind controls through sex, and then the dad is the ritual sacrifice at the end. So he
Mm.
escapes his like mind control guy, who he finds out is just an animatronic scientist.
Who kept saying he was on his side. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's weird.
I wasn't gonna get too nitpicky because I'm no screenwriter, but I was kind of like, what's this guy's point? Why is he here? What's it? I didn't really get it. Other than I would just say, and we gotta get back to this before our show's over. But the programmer, he was the programmer. He represents that digital environment because the programmer is anti the processes of the organic biological life. Because when life is going on all around you, you have all these situations that you can't control. The programmer hates chaos, for lack of a better word. It hates the demands of the carbon life that force you to do something about your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're sitting there programming, you don't have to do any of it. I mean, I could go on, but yeah.
Well, the programmer is itself a computer. So that's the
Yeah, you're saying the guy himself is
Yeah.
actually a robot programmer. Right. I'd have to think about that, what that implies.
So then he meets up with that weird lady again who's kidnapped his little girl and made her into Sleeping Beauty. So the weird witchy lady that like seduced and RAP'd him, basically,
Yeah.
she is dressed up like the witch from Sleep or
Snow White, or well, the daughter's
yeah, the
kind
witch
of
from
like
Snow White.
Snow White.
And he goes
Yeah.
into the room, and the witch's single mom, her little boy, is in a princess costume.
Yeah. Oh no, sorry. Just to be very clear, she was dressed up like the queen from
Yes.
Snow White, not
Yeah.
the witch.
Right.
Same person.
Well, same thing.
Same person. Yeah.
But her little boy is dressed up like a little girl.
Yeah, that was a weird inversion. Like, honestly, maybe next time we talk, I'll have even more to say about this film because I was like, I kind of had to just wait. Talking about all these layers of the psyche, I gotta wait for some stuff to percolate because there's so many things going on in that film.
Mm-hmm.
Because something that can definitely be. Go ahead.
It goes places that you do not expect.
It
right?
really does. It really does. I'm gonna bust this chart out again really quick.
Okay.
What I found so interesting about Jim and the witches and the sirens and even the daughter at the end is like so much of where we get an issue with men and women and men's interest in frankly inappropriate sexual things is because, well, here I go saying because, quote unquote, it's because that contrasexual, the anima, the soulmate, the woman in you, the woman in me, the man in you, more so the woman in a man, because it's more of the issues with men. If you imagine this like a layer, a man's conception of a woman will be so rooted in his mother that it's not even funny. It's really not funny. Like, it's just the facts of life. Like, the mother is the first woman a man will ever encounter in his life. She becomes the blueprint for everything. It has a lot to do with how you will develop later on in life, and without like kind of making up a whole Freudian story, why men like Jim in this film become obsessed with the young girls is because they have so much shadow baggage. They have all this cultural hang up to get them between them and the icon, the woman, the soulmate inside of them. And so it'll often come out in the craziest perversions. Like that's something where my real heart goes out to people that are plagued by these sexual demons, to say it that way, the succubi, is because there's so many layers of conditioning that men have gone, and women, but people go through in order to develop their tastes, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And men just get so hung up on that beautiful young girl, the pristine, the virginal, all that kind of stuff, that like I totally understand why dudes get pervy and creepy. I don't condone it. I think it's the nightmare and disgusting, but like well, disgusting is a strong word, but I understand the hang up, and I think it's almost this uneducation we have of how psychodynamics work, that we just are so quick to blame like the mom, and rightly so, but rather than ask the person, hey, are you plagued by demons? We're just going to say, you creepo, you pervo, you weirdo. You know, we have no compassion in our culture for people that are plagued by these things, frankly. Like, I don't condone it, but I do think there's healing that could be done there.
It's an affliction.
Right. And so I brought that all up just in this context to say, when the girl is on the bed, now being the sacrifice, the daughter, she represents his soul on some level.
Okay.
And they could hash it out more, but to me, that's how I read it. Was like, oh, finally it's gotten to this point throughout the story where that sort of feminine dimension of himself, it doesn't have any life. He can't get with his wife. He can only get with the succubus. He keeps being lulled into temptation by these sirens. It will culminate with the sacrifice of his soul at the altar of the demon witch, which it does. And finally, he then is a hero, quote unquote. He goes and saves his daughter, gets out of there. But then what happens?
Well, when he goes in to save his daughter, she's the Sleeping Beauty. We think she's dead, but she's just playing. And the the weird lady, we come to find out, was a former Disney princess with mental problems who is now aged out. And she once killed a child by accident.
I don't remember that part. I remember her Disney princess, but what'd she do to kill a child?
She hugged it too tight or something.
Oh, right.
And so she killed that child, and then now she has mental problems. And
it's like her son then becomes the princess she couldn't ever be.
Yeah, or it could be like SEXTRAFF. You know, high power people want little he she boys.
Which, hey, maybe
prescient
towards,
because Disney does not value the woman in her motherhood role, and this is something that I talk about a lot, is like the 3 phases of woman, for lack of a better understanding, is like maiden, mother, crone.
Yeah.
And so they're obsessed with the women in their maiden form, and then in their motherhood they are completely wiped out, and then in her like matriarch or crone stage they're an evil witch.
Yeah, what an interesting inversion of all of that.
There's no like mature woman in her fullness in her motherhood.
There's no Theotokos. No. Let's just say it,
It's either a fairy godmother or a mouse or a father or something. So yeah, I talk about how Disney kills the mom like all the time.
It's funny. Yeah, I remember you mentioned that last time, and I definitely know from all experience of Disney movies the lack of the mother or parents in general. But yeah, I'm realizing in my own development of thought how much the anti-family, anti-biology, that theme is like, whoa, this is way more kind of a high alert than I've ever really considered. And so when you say anti-mother, I mean, it's like, I mean, yeah, how many threads do you want to go from there between like depopulation, sterilization, all this kind of stuff, you know?
Right.
Let alone the lack of young boys to have a positive female role model in their life.
Mm.
Let's just start there too. You know, like, yeah.
So finally, when dad returns to the hotel room and the day is over, he gets sick and he starts to throw up hairballs because he's got the cat flu.
That was so
Right.
weird. I loved again like this low budget arty way of portraying something very disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So he is now a biohazard and the son won't help him. So the dad's super sick in the bathroom. Everyone else is asleep and the son gets up and the dad's like, help me, call 911 or something. And the son just shuts the door and lets him die.
Right.
Um, so that kind of goes back to what you're saying about like killing the dad because the dad is the icon of the father, God the Father and stuff. So now we severed that whole thing. And now this family unit is without its head.
You know, it's funny is on the kid kills the guy twice. Once outside the door at the very beginning when he shuts him out. So at this point, I'm just being poetic here, but when he blocks him out through the glass door, this is where the dad then enters into Wonderland, where you can see it's like it's such a cliche joke, but in Anchorman, he's like, "I'm in a glass case of emotion." It's such a good symbol because that's the problem with glass. You can see stuff, you can see the problem, but you can't touch it. You can't actually get to it with your carbon body. And so at one level, when the kid first blocks the dad out, he's initiating him into the spiritual, so to, he's on some level creating one threshold, one veil that he'll now have to, well, he's blocked out from and will have to pass through. And then again, at the end, when the kid blocks him out, finally, he what's the next effect? See, the first effect when he blocks the dad out from the sliding glass door is he goes into spiritual delusion. This point, when the child closes the door, he dead.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, the biome finally dies at that point.
It's very Shakespearean and it's also very Egyptian in like the Horus, Isis, Osiris play, where the son takes over the role of dad. So when dad dies, he now becomes a biohazard. And somebody said there was an inverted pentagram in the bathroom. I didn't notice that, but somebody else noticed that.
I didn't know.
So a Disney crew has to come and clean up this mess, right? Like a biohazard Disney.
Yeah, it's interesting how it is a Disney crew, not anything else.
So they come and then they kind of do this weird thing where they're like, we're sorry for your lost little boy, but here is a memory. So he like anoints him and he gives him a false memory.
That's right.
Of Buzz Lightyear ride, which he never got to ride because they closed the ride down. They got to the front of the line. But so instead of his father, he now has a memory of Buzz Lightyear.
It's like, wow, yeah, I'm just refraining because I'm having a lot of lights pop off on that one. But let's just say the idea of replacing father with the surrogate, the memory. And see, again, Buzz Lightyear dad is the ideal, right? The whole trip, that kid's only script line was basically like, I want to go on Buzz Lightyear. I want to go on Buzz Lightyear. I want what I want fulfilled. And he gets it at the end. I guess you could say the price of having his father.
So the weird thing is like the dad has like this demonic smile on his face when he's dead.
That was like the Joker, Batman style, that's how Joker kills people.
So I don't know if they were trying to say that he went to heaven, which was the idealized version of his life with the hot wife and the daughter and no son. Did you notice that? Like he still had a family, but he didn't have a son to compete with, and his wife was like super hot.
Did he have a daughter? He still had his daughter?
Yeah, he had a daughter.
Wow, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
I would think the rigor mortis smile, my take was that he's finally he's at the happiest place on earth.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a very weird sci-fi Twin Peaks black and white, I thought that made it very interesting.
I think the black and white made it really, I enjoyed the black and white. I think it also, without like pulling the curtain back, I think it helped for production wise and technical stuff. It probably made it easier to adjust the lighting and certain green screen locations and things by being in black and white. But I loved it. I thought it played a lot more on shadow
Yeah.
than on pixel by being in black and white.
So that was Escape from Tomorrow 2013. You guys should check it out. And so
Yeah,
as we're coming up on 3 hours again, we're gonna wrap it up with the Rescuers real fast and the Rescuers Down Under. Let's dive right in. What
so, if I may, I don't want to miss this point. It's like the one thing I wrote on the anti-biology, anti-family note. And I guess now that I'm pulling it out of context, it might not have that same rhythm and flow we were at, but it's kind of something that I think is important with this Disney thing we're talking about. Is that the anti-family discarnate Disney didn't really begin until you could say the 90s, 2000s is when it really started to kick in. And I'll just read the notes just so I could have it out there. People can meditate on it, whatever.
Okay.
The discarnate programming sensibility, our modern world, tweeting everything on our phone, all that kind of stuff, program. Like in that video, the TikTok, got to spend all this time to pose all the U-Haul boxes, program my moving in situation to even make that presentable. It harbors this sensibility of the programmer, harbors extreme antipathy for the processes and the demands of our carbon-based systems and our environments. Like you said in our notes, and I was joking, it is silicon versus carbon. This is sort of the new world we're moving in. And I will be clear, it's not a world we have to live in. We don't have to live in this world. We can make the choice of what we want, but this is what they are giving us in our culture. For example, we're fanatic about the carbon footprint now, saving the earth. It wasn't until the earth became enclosed within, getting back to our chart here, satellite environment, not until that point did everything we do Earth became an artifact. Oh, let's do ecology. Let's save the planet. Now that we're able to stand outside of the Earth and look at it and program it to alter the seasons, alter all the environment, we hate the processes of nature. That's why we hate, quote unquote, global warming. So what happens then is we're so fanatical about the carbon footprint, as this will happen at the same time as our discarnate, to use a pun, antibody, our antibody will become the new figure in our world. And we're going to just basically become more and more like gods. Like that's basically the idea I'm kind of getting at, is like the thing you got to know, forgive me. The way that I study technology is that whatever the content becomes is already obsolete. It's so done in the past that it's now able to become an art form, something we talk about. Where there's a joke, we don't know who discovered water, but it certainly wasn't a fish. On the level that you don't know what you're in until you're in a new environment. Right. Now that we're in this new satellite digital environment, we are seeing all the effects of the last several decades, 100 years even, of electricity, and this idea of the discarnate that's been going on for about 100 years is now being wedded with programming.
Yes.
So now that we can create programming and the discarnate, we have small world becoming the world in your pocket. The last little thing I was going to say in my notes on this whole thing, and then we'll go to Rescue Rangers and cut out. The 90s, 2000s, the personal computer as a symbol, let's say, is a predecessor to our smartphone world. This has been going on for a long time. And it imbued all the way back in the 90s was the idea of cancel culture. And we had the PC thing that was beginning in the 80s, late 80s, that kind of stuff. And kind of like what I'm saying is like the programmer has a bias that is inherently against, I'll just say it, Christ and the incarnation. It's
Mm-hmm.
against the logos being in the body. It's heavily narcissistic and has hostility towards carbon systems,
Mm-hmm.
the family. I mean, that's what I got. I had to say it because that's my big takeaway from our Disney stuff this month was this sort of anti-family, anti-biology, and how that is more of a novel thing in the Disney world than in the past Disney, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And it adds one more layer of this crazy Disney pie that we're working with.
Well, you said something about the Magic Kingdom versus Christ Kingdom. And I thought it was so poignant because the devil is like the king of synthetic things.
He is the artificer
Yes.
in many ways. And it's like right down to Lucifer and Prometheus and the very lot. See, again, all this, the perennialists will do this whole, oh yeah, Jesus, Lucifer, Prometheus, they're all Osiris, they're all kind of the same. They all symbolize this thing that, is taking power from God and giving it to man. But yeah, so yeah, I think the Luciferian, Promethean. See, it's funny. The artificer, Satan, Lucifer, the programmer. Let's say Prometheus, the light bringer, the electric light bringer, is almost giving way to Lucifer, the light being who programs you.
Mm-hmm.
This is this new archetype we're moving in, just like the Luciferian programmer, where the first part of this century was the Promethean man who brings light, who brings electricity, who brings Disneyland, who brings the Main Street Electrical Parade, who brings all these things in the world. The next phase will be the Luciferian programmer who uses light, which you can never catch. Remember, in light speed, you can't ever process what's going on because everything's happening and happening and happening. There's no ground to stand on.
Mm.
Great place for the angel of light to come in and program us.
Right.
So I get excited. I got excited on this one.
If I said the words Lucifer Trust, what comes to mind? Or the Society of Lucifer?
I don't know. I guess I just think immediately of just occult type of groups, but I don't know. What do you got? Hit me with it.
Well, that is what the UN was called before it was the United Nations.
Really?
Yes. And
Lucifer's Trust.
yes, and then it was called Lucius Trust, and then it became United Nations. And that brings us right into The Rescuers, 1977 Walt Disney movie, which, in my opinion, was just some sort of commercial for the UN.
Go on. I had thoughts. Go on.
Okay. Well, we can talk about the UN is the Tower of Babel. It's the New World Order. It's the syncretizing of all of the governments and religions under one.
Do you know when the UN began?
Wasn't it like in the 70s or was it earlier?
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely be 20th century, right?
Okay.
If it's 20th century, then forgive me, but my ideas may be relevant, I guess.
I'm gonna do a whole show on the UN itself because there's this really crazy thing at the top called the meditation room with this like big giant black rock that's supposed to be the cube from 2001 Space Odyssey. Okay, UN, United Nations. When did this start? 1945.
Okay, perfect. This is exactly these things take place on a long scale. But see, the nation state didn't begin until print, like I was saying in this conversation. It wasn't until print were you able to put a Bible in Italian, in English, in German, in French. Before the nations, before print was the Roman Empire, the empire. Once print, what I'm trying to say is the whole nation's print-based identity becomes the figure, the UN, all these nations, and under one frame, now become the new figure inside the electric post-national world. It's like UN could, I mean, I'm reaching, but I think the UN could only be created since the 20th century. It couldn't have existed prior to this last century.
Right. So this movie is about an orphan, a girl who's kidnapped, and all of the rescuers of the UN are mice, and that's their job to help little orphaned children, right?
See, man, we're having some motifs here. Like earlier, we are talking about the little creatures that help you get your task accomplished. Here again, we have mice that happen to be the key players, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
And so at the UN, every foreign delegate has his little mouse counterpart, his little mouse demon, his little mouse familiar.
Ah, you know, okay. Now you say it. I didn't think about it like that. Yeah, yeah. Okay, go on. They're like their spirit animal.
Yeah. So, you know, the guy from Japan gets to the UN to do his job, and then the little Japanese mouse like hops out of his briefcase and goes to the mouse meeting. And what the mice do is rescue little kids. And I just thought this is such a weird premise for a movie. And throughout both of these movies, they're constantly saying things like, or locations actually, like Devil's Bayou and Satan's Ridge. And so there's definitely like a diabolic chord running through these movies.
Especially in Down Under, there was like those 3 spots in the map that were all like heavily satanic in their names, you could say, you know. Do you think, why do you think, why is the UN saving children?
Yeah, I don't know. Good point. Because I think that's a lot of times they try and make you think these agencies are doing good, like are the good guys, you know, like the CIA or the FBI or whatever. Like, oh, we just have a crazy calamity world if it wasn't for them running around Team America, you know.
If it wasn't for the program, the national programmers to program the environment, we would not be able to save the children.
Right.
Sorry, I'm reaching here, but guess
no,
I'm really on the
we're on the right track. And I was looking, I guess I did not include it in my book, but The Rescuers 1977 is one of the classic ones that people put up to talk about subliminal messages, because it has a scene where they're going past a window, and like just for a split second there's a picture of an actual naked lady in the window. Have you seen that?
I have, yeah. I wasn't able to get it on Disney Plus. I'm pretty sure they probably got rid of it on there.
Yeah, probably.
But I was able to see that on YouTube, and I saw that clip.
So here again, you have a little girl who's an orphan. She doesn't get adopted. This reminded me of also that movie, All Dogs Go to Heaven.
That's been forever since I've seen that one.
And the Rescuers and Rescuers Down Under were 2 I had on VHS when I was a little kid. So like a lot of these like childhood memories were coming back. And just the way that little girl didn't get adopted choked me up again.
Dude, me too. Like
really?
like let's step aside a quick minute of satanic Disney. Like there are a couple moments I was like, man, regardless of who makes this film, it's so sad when children are
sad. Well,
and then in the end when she got
trauma that now they can insert into you. Now that you've been traumatized, you're more suggestible, right?
Yeah. See, preying on emotions, it's terrible. They even get me, you know.
Yeah.
I'm a grown-ass adult.
So the adult woman in this is Madame Medusa, who's a total like Cruella de Vil character, but she's got like Karen hair.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny, Karen hair. Yeah. The names in this film were so interesting. We had Nero and Brutus, the crocodiles.
Yeah.
Medusa. I didn't look up the etymology of Bernard, so I don't know all what that's supposed to mean. But I thought it's interesting that he's a janitor. He's like the cleanup crew coming in and taking things. But yeah, just the idea of the what was it? The Devil's Eye. I thought that one was really interesting.
Devil's Eye diamond is the pirate treasure they're looking for. And if I was going to take this really to stretch it as far as my occult knowledge will go, as far as I know, the Devil's Eye would be an anus.
I want to ask you to qualify that. I'll look that up on my own, but that's interesting. Unless you wanted to say more about it.
I really don't.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Go ahead.
I was
Oh
just
no,
gonna
you go
say,
ahead.
so they're going to Devil's Bayou. They're looking for the Devil's Eye diamond. The movie is only like an hour long, so there's not that much of a complicated plot. You know, the little girl's kidnapped because she's the only one who can fit down in the hole to get the Devil's Eye, and
Mhm.
the two enemies, what do you call them, villains, are putting her down there trying to get her to mine this diamond for her. And this just reminded me of this crazy documentary I saw called Eyes of the Devil 2021. And this is
Tell me about it.
one of the worst things I've seen in a long time. It's just
Oof.
about child TRAFF and organ harvesting in
Ugh.
Eastern Europe, like in the
Did you go to
that they're
confession
fighting.
afterward for watching that, or what?
What?
I said, did you go to confession afterwards for watching that,
Oh,
or?
no, I mean, I didn't do anything, but it's just like,
Oh, I'm just saying, it just feels so tarnished, like feeling so dirty, probably watching something like, I don't know, it probably would that'd probably affect me a lot. I'm pretty sensitive to
yeah.
this stuff.
I mean, after you've read stuff like this and the other satanic ritual abuse, you develop a callous kind of, but in another way, it does victimize you just by knowing it.
Right. Doesn't that make you, it's like, I guess I'll just ask you, like, what do you think we could do, what do you want to do by all this in the sense of like, like raising awareness? It's so crazy because there's so many things here that you're on about that I'm like, it's very enlightening in many ways, but it's like also like, man, what do we do about all this kind of stuff, you know?
Um, for me, just what I've been doing, like for the past 15 years, just trying to write books, make shows. I talk about it, whoever asks me. I don't have a Jamie for the normal world and one for here. Like, I just am about this. Like, let's get the information out and let's stop having Disney in our church and our life. Um,
Yeah,
I
it's one of
have
those.
gone through dark periods of despair and depression because the world is the way it is. And like, I feel like I'm one of the only people that can see it that way. I know that there are many, many, many more people, even content creators, but it gets very lonely.
Well, when it brought me to Disney, studying it in this kind of way was, I remember I was in my dark spot a couple of years ago, and I was following kind of my thread wherever it'd take me. That's an interesting idea. I think I was telling you last time, I had a dream about Jesus. I'll start studying Jesus. I'll dream about hippos. I'll start getting into hippos. But when I started just observing culture and how like prior to coming to orthodoxy, just kind of like, wow, we're in this God is dead world where you just pick your idol and you just deal with it. And I realized I was almost satirical to the point of like, wow, is this what, if I had to pick some stupid demigod of the modern world to pay tribute to, I guess I would have to pick Disney, quote unquote, because they're the only one that's bringing happiness, family values,
Mm-hmm.
America, even if you want to be, national on some level and be proud of where you live, like they were the only quote unquote new religion that still had some Christian values to it. But then as I started using that as a thesis idea or hypothesis, I was like, oh, wait, no, it's a total Gnostic, like weird Luciferian death cult. And,
Yeah.
I started stumbling across stuff, came across your work, long, long down the road. But yeah, it's like, wow. So it's just
Um,
nice talking to someone else about this kind of crazy Disney stuff, man.
well, I have an important question for you.
Okay.
Who is that kitty behind you?
Oh, that's Sherlock.
Oh,
It's funny. He doesn't really do counters.
he's cute.
Uh, it's kind of that's really funny. Like honestly, he's probably still that counter like 2 or 3 or 4 times in our whole life together over the last almost 8 years. Yeah,
He
that's
wants to
Sherlock.
be on. He's real cute. Okay.
He's part Maine Coon. If anyone's
Oh,
wondering, he's super vocal
oh,
and.
he's gonna loaf right there for us, right
All
behind
right, all right, cool. This is
us.
novel. This must be something special. Hopefully, he doesn't give us cat fever.
Um, cat fever.
Or cat flu, whatever that
So
was. Movie.
part of the MK Ultra program, the beta programming they call it, is Sex Kitten. programming.
Mhm.
So I wonder if that has anything to do with cat fever. Anyway, on to Rescuers Down Under 1990. This was a way better movie than the 1977. I watched this as a kid a lot, but the music was bringing me back, man. I remember like when he's soaring through the air on the eagle. I am, 10 years old again.
I had way more memories with Rescuers Down Under than the first one. Like when I watched the first one, I was like, wow, I don't really remember this one very much at all. Like I remember Medusa Lady being one of the scarier looking villains. Her like gross eyelashes and just like she was so haggard the way they portrayed her. I never liked it as a kid. It always terrified me. As an adult, I guess my one take I had on Rescuers was it to me it hit me a few days later and I was realizing is just to be candid, like when I've struggled in the past with, let's say, like, sorry, the cat's just totally distracting me. When I struggled in the past with more, for lack of a better word, addictive tendencies, wanting, needing that thing and not getting it. I realized this movie is kind of about addiction on some level because when when somebody wants that diamond, we will do whatever it takes to get it.
Mm.
Even putting the girl down in the hole to go fetch it, forgetting all humanity, all charity, anything for the price of the jewel, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's just kind of a little takeaway I had from it. The sort of, yeah.
So, man, that opening scene. Okay, so this is set in Australia, and the little boy, he has a sweet life, like saving animals and riding eagles, and he just has like the most adventuresome, free, like dream childhood, right? And then you
No dad to punish
no
him.
dad.
But I say that tongue in cheek, but yeah, no dad.
Well, it's weird because they don't even show the mom as a character. Like they don't
He
even,
doesn't have a face.
yeah, it's just from here down. And she has a couple lines, but that's it. And then the dad's gone. There is a poacher, McLeach the poacher. So this reminded me of like Bambi and all of the environmental stuff that Disney pushes, which leads to the carbon taxes and all that stuff, and the animism. And like you were saying, they're trying to go back to pagan nature worship and replace Christ's kingdom with the animal kingdom or the magic kingdom. And like you said, Terrence McKenna talks about this. This has to do with drugs, taking drugs and going back to nature, because in his mind, we are all just
right. I'm not
apes.
going anywhere.
Okay. Well, according to Terrence McKenna, our consciousness came from hallucinogenic substances. So we were just like cavemen who tripped out, and suddenly now we have civilization.
Well, he goes even further and says we come from mushrooms.
Yeah.
But I stood up for a second because again, like, man, I'm not good with Bible-y stuff, but I do remember this one line. I just read it today, and I'm sorry, one line out of context. I'm doing a Protestant thing, but Romans 1:20. Indeed, since the creation of the world, invisible things are clearly seen. They are perceived through created things, even in his everlasting power and divinity. Sorry, I'm going to go on one verse. Because knowing God, they did not glorify him or give him thanks. Instead, they became vain in their reasoning, and their senseless heart was darkened, their nous. Thinking themselves to be wise, they became fools. Here it comes. They changed the glory of the incorruptible God for the likeness of an image of corruptible man, of birds, and of four-footed animals and creeping things. Romans 1:23. So just saying, there's even biblical precedent, of course, for even our Disney stuff can go back so far in the idea that like man creating these idols out of the animals.
Mm-hmm. And saying that man is just an animal. So that is one of the tenets of the Satanic Church, is that man is just an apex predator. And this whole nature preserving scam, this climate change, this carbon footprint, all of this stupid stuff. Now, if you really think that these people care about environment, you are so dumb. Because like, look at what happened in East Palestine. All of these people were so freaked out about ecology and pristine and preserving and stuff. What happened when that chemical spill happened? Nothing. Not FEMA, not the president, not they got no help, they got no press, they got no coverage. And this is probably a disaster that's going to affect a lot of people very soon. And
Mm.
so this just proves to you they do not care about what they're talking about. They care about enslaving people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't want to go too far on it, but I mean, yeah, man, it's like without even maybe making it about hurling arrows at the enemies, God loves you, everybody. Like, there's a real God who's a real person that actually cares for humanity. More, he's the only lover of mankind. Like these idols we go and pay tribute to, like somebody could be listening to this and being like, what, you Orthodox people just think you don't have Netflix, you don't have Hulu, you don't have any of this stuff, you just go grow your own vegetables. It's like, no, obviously we all are stuck in this stupid fallen world, but it's, what I hear you on your show and what Jay's been talking about and what a lot of these people are talking about is like, we just have to do something to be aware of this crazy chain that we're a part of that it's so hard to get out of,
Well, we're
like,
mice locked in the theme park, and it's just like different cages. There's the theme park, and then the outside is just a reflection of that because you have the illusion of choice between Burger King or McDonald's, or Coke, Pepsi, blah blah blah.
exactly. It's like, are you a Hulu guy, Netflix guy?
Yeah.
Are you into Disney Plus? Do you do Amazon? Like, who is your thing,
So Rescuers Down Under takes place in a very enchanting place in Australia called Uluru, and that big rock is called Ayers Rock. And throughout the movie, they're constantly talking about like Satan's Ridge, Nightmare Canyon, Devil's Peak, like all of right.
Yeah.
And I cannot remember where I heard this, but it was either David Icke or one of those people talking about Ayers Rock. They do have like satanic rituals there.
Really? So it wasn't a
I
fake place.
searched for you guys. I couldn't find the article I read about it, but if anybody wants to dig up Uluru, Ayers Rock, and the mystical properties of the rituals they have there, go for it. There was
That was
one last
real.
thing I wanted to mention before we wrap it up, and it was this weird TikTok that I saw about Frozen 2. And the whole movie is about destroying this dam that looks exactly like Hoover Dam.
Frozen 2.
Yeah, have you? I'm sure you haven't
I
seen
did.
it.
No, I actually did. I
Oh,
watched
you
it last
did?
year. I did. I had never seen the Frozen movies, and I checked them out just to kind of see, kind
Yeah.
of read the room. I don't really remember all too much. It rings a little bell now that you say that, but it was a pretty forgettable movie, to be honest with
So,
you.
but look that up because this guy had this whole thing about like it's just like Hoover Dam, and if something happens to that, then so many people will be out of power and water, and that would be another major natural disaster. That
I mean, that's the crazy thing that like of our world right now. Right now, it's always been something like this for everybody, but we take things for granted so much about the infrastructure. Like again, getting back to this, like, I mean, forgive me if I'm gonna like go PSA mode, but it's like people try to be more analog than digital. If only for a little bit every day to just remember that this digital thing can all be taken from us. Like on some beautiful, tragic level, our conversation right now, hopefully we've said something, bear some fruit, bear some truth in the world. But if it weren't for this digital environment, it could never happen. You
Mhm.
wouldn't have a livelihood if it weren't for the digital. So it's like on some level, we have to give Caesar what's due to Caesar. But on another level, it's like, how much do you give without pushing back and stepping outside of it, And so I guess up here where I live in Humboldt County, like we get earthquakes and stuff all the time where the power will go out for a couple days. And it's like, that's that, and it's like you don't realize how much your world we live in Wonderland, our own Disneyland bubble, until the power goes out. And I realize as an honest to God Christian, I'm like, you know what? I'm a terrible sinner because I want coffee more than anything else in the world right now.
Mhm.
Even more than praying. I just want hot water for coffee, and I realize like I'm so weak. I'm so weak, like I can't handle anything. It's like, what would I do when the when the real gulag comes. You know, it's like I can't even not have my French press before 8 a.m. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't know. It's just when you're saying Hoover Dam, it just got me thinking about like, yeah, man, these infrastructures that we totally take for granted. That
Well, the whole thing is so fragile. Like I realized when I started getting into conspiracy theories and stuff, and I'm like, if they shut off the semi trucks, we have no food.
it's just so funny. Okay, this is a perfect tie-in, and maybe you can send us out from here. When I was showing my friend that TikTok video, and he was riffing to me about it, and I was just riffing to you tonight about what I was saying, like nerves, 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 my emotions. I'm processing. I'm processing. This is what I'm eating. This is what I'm buying. He made a joke. He said, trucks, 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 trucks. That like this whole thing would not happen if it weren't for the trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, like in media ecology, Marshall McLuhan, he would make riffs that like the trucker is the modern day knight in shining armor, knight in tin,
Mm.
driving around in the big metal carriage with his armor around him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he's like the last person traversing the wild landscape. You know, saving us princesses who need our organic whole foods. You know.
Yeah, I mean, back in like 2010, I got really heavy into like learning about permaculture and like gardening and just backyard gardening. I haven't had the like environment to do that in yet, but I was really trying to get that out there. Like, guys, have some food near you, like, because they can just shut this off at any time and we'd be super screwed.
I hear you, and I pray too that you'll be able to get your garden one day. That'd be great.
I hope, I mean, it's my dream that like maybe this can turn into more of a balanced agrarian type of, food, not lawns. Like food is free.
Mm.
It grows on trees, and why do we have to spend money for like
That's what's
fruit
so,
and vegetables? Like that's so crazy to me.
yeah, it's crazy. Sorry for interrupting you there. This Lent, I had one experience last week where I ate the strawberry and I was just like, oh my gosh, like strawberries are so good. Like just eating all these whatever normal scones and cookies and whatever. And then you realize like, wow, real fruit from God's mind. You know, it's like you can't beat it, man. Like
Yeah.
you really can't. I
Yeah.
hear you. Like and in a funny way, that's what a lot of the hippie, Terrence McKenna environmentalists, like this is where I have a lot of compassion for them. And I agree. Like, yeah, let's get back to farming. Like let's, but on some level, I think there's a romantic um what's the word I'm looking for? Ignorance. Well, if I just go get a plot of land, if I just hit the farm right, none of these problems will be mine anymore.
Mhm.
It's like on some level, I think that is some shirking away. Like you said, it's great to have food in our environment. We should all be able to have a little garden on hand. But I really wonder if just in the 21st century to not have a Facebook account would be the new type of ascetic
Mm.
battle, like
Yeah.
really, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we're so weak compared to our forerunners. It's like
Well,
anything we could do.
any of these little hooks that they have in you that you can remove will be better for you, I think.
Great metaphor. I like it. Yeah.
But we are going on 3.5 hours, and I love
We did
talk so much. I
it.
thought we went to a lot of cool places, and I think people will enjoy it. And I hope you guys enjoyed our show, Woke Disney World. And thank you, Paul, for coming back. And we'll see
It was
you
a pleasure.
next
Thank you,
time.
Jamie, for having me. And thanks to your audience. And it's a crazy thing being on YouTube. I'll tell you that. It's so surreal. I don't know how you guys do it. I'll learn in time. But
Um,
thank you so much for your patience.
Beware ye who enter YouTube comments. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. Amen. Amen.